across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, thank you so much for your company today. I'm afraid some of it in the today's show is going to be a bit harrowing. And we had this yesterday from midday when we had the extraordinary Phase 1 report from the Southport inquiry, where we learnt about, a lot of stuff, frankly, we already knew, but a lot of more revelations that are just, when put together in one big report, just frankly, utterly terrifying about the abject inability of our, well, pretty much every single agency in this country to protect us from lone, dangerous killers. As simple as that. I am, of course, talking about the Southport report and Axel Rudiger-Barner, and the report showing that it was a clearly signposted disaster waiting to happen, and how, in particular, his parents failed to intervene and do their moral duty. Well, it's no surprise that the lawyer for the families of the 3 children who died, bearing in mind many other children devastated, many others with life-changing injuries in that horrific attack back in July 2024, this lawyer is calling for basically criminal prosecution of individuals involved. Is that what we need to start doing to get people to face up to their responsibilities to keep people safe? I want to hear that from you, what you think on that. Talking of the absolute abject inability of authorities to keep us safe from individual killers, what about the abject inability of our governments over many years, but this government included, to keep us safe from attacks from abroad? Russia, Iran, China, any other adversaries who are, by the way, already basically doing sort of, war in reality against us in terms of cyber attacks and everything else. But the former NATO chief, Lord Robertson, a former Labour minister, but then boss of NATO for many years, who actually wrote this government's own strategic defence review that was due to be published some months ago, but still hasn't appeared. In terms of the action he wrote the review, but in terms of the action that's supposed to be taken as a result of it. He has spoken out in an article in the FT today, but a speech he's giving today, warning that Britain's leaders have shown a corrosive complacency towards defence, and our security is, in his words, in peril. Is there any aspect of the government of this country that functions on any basic level? Because I'm worried that the answer to that is no. It certainly doesn't work in other countries as well, because we've got another case of French police standing by, watching, smoking their jetés, looking forward to their 3-hour lunch as illegal migrants board a dinghy headed towards Britain once again. I'm a bit cross today because I think we should all be cross. I really, really, really think we in Britain need to start being more angry about how utterly incompetent the Muppets are who are in charge of our country. I say Muppets because that in a way makes light of it, but we shouldn't make light of it, because we have police, we have social services, we have teachers, we have to prevent strategy, we have counter-terrorism, we have everybody in the world who are in charge of keeping us safe from, frankly, the lunatics, the dangerous men and women among us who wish us ill. And again, they fail us, and they fail us because a lot of the time they simply don't do their job because they can get away without doing it, because it's a committee making a decision rather than them individually holding responsibility for a crazed killer being released from a psychiatric unit, for people being released on probation from prison who are known to be a threat and a danger to people. And, a teenage boy who is hoarding machetes and ricin at his home and spends all day, every day for years looking at violent genocide videos, who has gone to school 10 times with a knife, been expelled, returned to the school with a hockey stick and beaten other children senseless, caught by a police officer with a knife, threatened his parents, threatened the social care workers and others who've come to visit in the house so much they wouldn't enter the house without a police officer present. But no. The concern was, was he a danger to himself rather than a danger to others? That was the main concern, and was, in the words of one of the former head teachers at the school, which is for the children who are too dangerous to be in other schools, this head teacher, he said that She was basically, when she said she feared that the Southport killer was a danger, that she was accused of racially stereotyping a black boy with a knife. But isn't that exactly what happened with Valdo Callaghan, the Nottingham killer? That actually the psychiatric authorities thought, well, we're basically locking up too many black men who were at risk, who was schizophrenic, we shouldn't lock him up. He went on to kill 3. What about the security guard at the Manchester Arena in 2017 who didn't tackle the, turns out, Islamist terrorist with a rucksack with a bomb, blew 22 people, including 8-year-old children, to smithereens, many hundreds more severely maimed, life-changing injuries. So Salman Abedi wasn't stopped because he didn't want to be accused of being racist, because the guy basically, looked like he was Middle Eastern and looked like he could be a bomber. That was the view of the security guard. And he didn't want to be sacked for doing that. Again and again and again. The concern about not offending anybody, the concern about not being seen to be racist, the concern about not wanting to sort of do the wrong thing has meant that the very, very worst thing has happened. In Manchester Arena, 22 lost their lives. Nottingham killer took 3 lives. 3 other lives completely devastated. A miracle he didn't kill others. And 3 little girls who died in July 2024. BB King, age 6, Elsie Dotstan Kim, age 7, Alistair Silva Aguera, age 9. Never forget their names, because we need to keep their names, if not them, we need to keep their names alive. 8 other little girls, also lives devastated, you got stabbed. Many others in that room who also had to live with the nightmares of that, and 2 adults as well. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. Things have got to change. No more lessons learned. Things have got to change. Individuals need to be prosecuted. Most importantly, I would say, the parents of Axel Rudikabana, who knew what a threat he was, who knew that the only time he did leave the house was when he wanted to kill someone, and they let him do it. They have blood on their hands, as well as Axel Rudikabana. Should they be prosecuted? Should individuals and agencies whose job it was to keep this man away from us, to keep us safe, to keep our children safe, should they be prosecuted? I want to hear from you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and as you know, texts cost 1 standard network rate message. Tom Slater joins me this morning, editor of Spiked Online. You and I have talked about this case an awful lot. I still remember this happening when I was on air, and we only got the information around about 12:30 back in July 24, and we weren't sure what the attack was. The information was very unclear at the time, and we came off air and realised what had happened. And then as the day unfolded, we realised the full scale. And then I was on air when we had the it was just horrific, the sentencing remarks from the judge, and hearing about what had happened and what these little girls had gone through, and the heroism on the day of some adults trying to save these children is just astonishing. I mean, it's kind of beyond belief what they've gone through. This report from this inquiry chair, Sir Adrian Fulford, so hard hitting. I mean, so clear, so obvious in terms of how he's pointing the finger, particularly at Axel Rudikabana's parents, Alfonso and Letitia. What do you make of it?
Well, it's utterly damning of essentially every state agency, of every layer of society, and its inability to intervene. If you think about the usual safeguards against something as horrific as this, you would think starts with the parents, that if people genuinely thought that their son was capable of this, and there was plenty of evidence suggesting that he was, that something would have been done about it. The fact that, we often talk after cases like this of someone having slipped through the net. He didn't slip through the net. He was caught in the net time and again, and then just lifted out. The fact that the police at one point found him in possession of a knife, just took him home
on a bus, and
that was it.
There was no. I thought we'd agreed there was a rule: if you're found with a knife, you go to prison.
Also, there would have been grounds at that point, as was pointed out in the report, to search his computer, to search his room. At that point, the writing would have been discovered, the Al Qaeda training manual, all of the things which would have indicated just how dangerous this individual was, and yet nothing happened. The fact that when the school tried to raise the alarm about him, as you've already discussed, the now the head teacher of the school was in a different position at the time, raising the issue of how sinister she thought he was, and then insisting that word was removed, and part and parcel of this idea that she might have been racially profiling him. It's fascinating that in this time where we're actually past 10 or 20 years become obsessed with safeguarding, become obsessed with all of these different mechanisms to try and protect particularly children, that we've had a string of cases now where not only has that failed, it's quite clear that it's been the killer who has been safeguarded, the killer who has been tiptoed around, and that's been infused with all of this political correctness. It's the idea if you happen to have a particular skin pigmentation, then you should be treated with kid gloves, even if you're hoarding knives and clearly a threat to
and yet, weirdly, that is the worst kind of racism. Well, you know, black kids have knives, that's just what they do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, could you think of anything more racist than that? And I don't want to focus purely on that aspect, but it's clearly a factor. And the fact that it's come up again and again and again in mass killings, I think we need to pay attention to it. You know, every single thing we can do. I mean, if we're going to talk about, you know, selling knives, kitchen knives with a blunt end on them, in you know, in online shops because someone's killing someone, that would seem to me to be less of an issue than, you know, getting rid of a situation where the authorities think it's okay for a black kid to have a knife on a bus. But I don't know, would I get arrested for having a knife on the bus? Looks like I showed a receipt from John Lewis. I don't know. I mean, I'm being glib, but I don't know a parent who is not just apoplectic about this, because, you know, could we just be in a situation? Could we just live in a country? I don't know, we're one of the safest countries in the world. Well, yeah, but I don't take that for granted when this stuff like this happens. Could we live in a country where it would be okay for our little girls to go to a pop concert or to go to a Taylor Swift themed you know, activity day and dance club during the summer holidays, and they don't get stabbed repeated by a madman who everyone knows is a danger, but they just don't really know what to do about him because he doesn't quite fall into any particular category, because he's not purely an Islamist extremist, although he's got some Al-Qaeda stuff in his room, but he's not this. So the prevent strategy went, oh, we're not sure, and everyone else failed us. It's not too much to ask that our children should come home from their day alive. Because this thing, often we're told, like, oh, you know, something's happened out of the blue. Again and again and again, it's not out of the blue, whether it's a terror attack. And yes, I think he was a terrorist. I think he was insane. But I think most terrorists are insane. I think by definition, if you are going to be blowing up people or stabbing children because of whatever your belief system, whichever religion it is or cause it is, and you think that that's okay, I think by definition, you're insane. I'm surely we should, you know, well, I don't care what you call it really, but I think that's what it is. But again and again, there's been warnings, like virtually every terror attack we've had, these people have been known to the authorities. I mean, judged well. They're not the top of the risk, so we think we can not follow them 24 hours a day. There's a resource issue there. Again and again, people have been referred to prevent strategy. Nothing's happened. You know, again and again, people have been in mental health services. Nothing happens. Expelled from school for violence. Nothing happens. I mean, again and again, we've seen violent kids put into schools. You know, and children being murdered by a kid who's clearly known to be violent in their school. This just keeps on happening, and the authorities go, oh, we have to have another inquiry. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. We've got to start making, you know, there's safety first on everything else. That's why we're driving at 20 miles per hour, right? Can't let people, as I said yesterday, can't let people see what's at the end of a supermarket aisle, because they're more likely to buy chocolate at the end of the aisle rather than the middle aisle. They nitpick, and they are so precise about all the little things that are affecting everybody who's law-abiding, going about their day, who's not a risk to anybody. And then they are completely blasé about the people who literally stand in front of a big red flashing neon sign saying, I am a danger to anyone I come across. You need to put me behind bars now for mine and everyone else's safety. And they go, well, we're not sure about that, so we'll leave you to it. I mean, that's insane.
No, it is, and it's
and immoral.
It is insane. It is immoral, and I think the problem is we're likely to learn the wrong lessons. I feel like a lot of the focus has been on the idea of process. So the idea that, oh, this case fell between the two stools of Islamism and far-right extremism, so therefore Prevent didn't really know.
Or different agencies. We need one lead agency. Yeah. I mean,
we need to kind of shuffle the deck chairs on the side, don't it? It's clearly the issue is that we've actually had a quite kind of process-led, almost like therapeutic approach to what are quite dangerous people. The Prevent scheme is a good example. I mean, we can talk about rejigging it, we can talk about how warped it's become, but ultimately, it's even when people do go through that process, there's no guarantee that they've been genuinely de-radicalised. There's people who just need to be locked up, whether that's because they're criminally insane in the case of a kind of Valdo Calacane figure, and yet was allowed to just even when he was sectioned, was allowed to just kind of check himself out time and time again.
And not take his medication.
Well, you've got someone like Axel Rueda Cabana who would have broken laws, who'd been carrying knives, had assaulted people, had tried to kill people. That time he showed up at school with the hockey stick, he also had a knife on him. The plan was to finish off the kid that he battered in the first place. It should have been a no-brainer from the perspective of policing. You do wonder, whilst the teacher's comments about not being told that she shouldn't racially profile Rueda Cabana have kind of grabbed all the headlines, you can't help but suspect that part of the reason the police might have given a slightly light hand to it was because, again, there was concerns about this looking racist or so on and so forth. And then the mental health part of this, again, there is we talk constantly about mental health. One thing we don't talk about is that it's extremity. That means that individual could be a threat to the public. Yeah. And no one wants to go back to the bad old days of insane asylums or whatever.
Locking everybody up.
There is clearly some people who need that extra level of intervention in order to protect the public.
To question everybody, should we have a multiple choice? How many times should a teenage boy be allowed to carry a knife into school and be caught? Bear in mind, those are the times he was caught. So I'm assuming he was carrying. And not be basically put somewhere very safe, right? Okay, is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? I mean, I'm laughing because it's... Oh, no, on the 8th, no. 9th, 10th, no, it's not. OK, taken out that school, put into another school. I mean, I'm sorry. Again, we've got this issue with kids who are not necessarily carrying knives but are violent and disruptive, not being taken out of schools, and the other 29 kids in their class are the ones who suffer. We have people in charge who are basically the lanyard wearing, chunky jewellery. You know the people. Prison is about sort of rehabilitating people. Idiots. They haven't got a clue. They don't know what real life is like, and they don't get it. And these people are a danger to us as well because they leave these people out. They're the people who free people on probation who are basically sadistic rapists and killers. They're the people who don't think those people should go behind bars at all. Everything's about redemption. Oh, sod off with your redemption. There are lots of people who are just bad people or too crazy to be helped. And either way, they shouldn't be our problem. They definitely shouldn't be the problem of 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and 9-year-old girls. And it's just obscene. I'm really impressed with this inquiry chair, and we've got phase 2 that's going to be looking further into a lot of this. The lawyer for the families of B.B. King, Elsie Dotskunk and Alistair Silva Aguero, he was on broadcasting this morning, and he was saying he wants, basic individuals in these agencies. He knows the names, he wants them named, and he wants them to face criminal prosecution, and the parents as well. It's understanding. It feels like apparently it's not. It might be quite hard for a prosecution of the parents. But a former detective who was posting online yesterday made a couple of, I think, very, very interesting points about how they could be prosecuted because the evidence, they knew he had the ricin, they knew he had to commit, they knew all of that, and that actually it would be very, very easy for them to be prosecuted, and the information and they absolutely should. I'm trying to find the exact crime she wants to. Section 38B of the Terrorism Act 2000. It makes it a criminal offence to stay silent when you know someone is planning terrorism. It's not a guideline, it's not a suggestion, it is a law. If you have information you know or believe might help prevent an act of terrorism and you don't tell the police, you have committed a criminal offence. The maximum sentence is 10 years. His son was convicted under the Terrorism Act because he had the Al-Qaeda training manual, even though we weren't told about that, by the way, until October, you remember. And basically, if he was convicted, then there's absolutely no reason why his parents couldn't also be convicted under the same law. I'm all for that. I want them convicted. At the very least, I don't want them in this country. And there's a lot of big question marks there also about they come from Rwanda. There've been quite a few questions. Weirdly, Keir Starmer was somehow involved in his asylum case, his case to come here. We don't know the history of this man, the father. We don't know what's been going on behind the scenes in this house. There are some big question marks. We still don't have a lot of answers to a lot of questions about this family.
And what we do know is incredibly damning, the sort of timeline that the report sets out in terms of how this happened, in terms of the red flags which were presented not just to the agencies but to his own family. Also, the frankly untruths that were said by both of his parents during the course of this process, suggesting that on the day itself, when Rueda Cabana leaves the house, they kind of thought nothing of it and thought he was going for a walk, despite the fact that they discovered the packaging of one of the knives that he was about to use in the attack, despite the fact that he hadn't left the house for a couple of years, and last time he did leave the house, it was also to try and stab someone to death. And just the kind of incredulity is absolutely fascinating. And there is also a parallel here, because obviously there's the refugee/asylum piece of this in the early 2000s, as I understand it, is when they first came to the UK. There are a lot of question marks over that process. On what basis was granted? You know, what may or may not have been their involvement in what is a very troubled country, to put it lightly, in which a lot of violence and atrocities have taken place. And again, you see a bit of a parallel. Why was Salman Abedi's parents allowed to settle in Manchester in the late 1990s, despite the fact they were from Libyan Islamist stock? And then we turn around as surprised that they've raised Islamist children.
They were watched by the authorities again and again as he and their sons returned to Libya to do training. I mean, something is going horribly wrong. And we need to stop it, because people are dying and children are dying. It's that simple. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Look, I also want to talk about Lord Robertson. He's a former Labour Defence Secretary. I'm old enough to remember, when he was in government, he was in, very, very, very big, very serious figure, George Robertson, when he was in Parliament. He then became the NATO Secretary General. Again, serious role for serious people. And I think very much someone who has been respected on all sides of the political arena. He's also the author of this government's Strategic Defence Review. We still haven't got the published last year, still haven't got the fallout of that in terms of what's the government going to do about the needs that he outlined. He's doing a speech today, and it's front page of the Financial Times today, saying that UK security is in peril. The country's leaders have shown over many years corrosive complacency towards defence. He's accused non-military experts in the Treasury of vandalism, and is basically saying, this is a wake-up call, what's been happening in Iran. And our inability to even protect Cyprus. We need to be acting now. Now, we know this recommended something like, was it about £28 billion more in terms of immediate spending in the next few years. We know that Keir Starmer has no intention of spending anything like that. Got no way, they can't borrow anymore, doesn't want to put taxes up anymore for that, but happily paying billions more in welfare. But even Lord Robertson, a Labour minister as was, makes the point that you cannot defend this country if you've got a ballooning welfare state and welfare bill. This is a reality check. Labour backbenchers are not going to allow the Prime Minister, even if he wanted to, well, we have no idea what he actually thinks about anything, because I don't think he knows what he thinks about anything, to spend money on defence that is urgently needed, rather than on a load of people who think they've got autism on a Friday afternoon. That's not going to be allowed to happen. We are in danger right now as a country.
And it's so striking that this is coming very much from within the Labour fold, very much from a figure of standing, and also just in the complete, in parallel with Keir Starmer trying to pose as a statesman on the world stage, trying to pretend that he could possibly take the lead in securing the Strait of Hormuz or protecting Ukraine after the war from further Russian aggression. It's absolutely laughable. And what you're seeing there is the kind of two of the priorities of this government really rubbing up against each other, one of which is the fact that Keir Starmer at least rhetorically recognises that we need to get real about defence and so on and so forth in a dangerous world, but at the same time stuck with a Labour Party which, and certainly on the backbenches, is just convinced that the job of the Labour Party is just to continue to funnel welfare even to people who frankly don't need it. And also kind of bean counting Treasury, which, yes, for understandable reasons is nervous about our kind of fiscal rectitude, but to the point which has become kind of cretinous and absurd. And also, let's face it, they've made their priorities clear. When it comes down to the question of national defence, or it comes down to the question of allowing 21-year-olds who think they've got, you know, problems with anxiety to remain essentially on the dole, they've made their choice.
I want to point out, I think you're being very cruel to Keir Starmer in terms of his role as a great statesman, because I think you'll find that today he set up a new cabinet committee to deal with the fallout to Iran. It's called the Middle East Response Committee. So no, don't you feel stupid? He set up another round of meetings with another bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, that aren't going to take any action, who've got no resources and no ability to do anything. And that, I think you'll find, makes him a statesman, Tom.
The mullahs of Tehran must be absolutely bricking it when they found out that new committee had been formulated. This is Keir Starmer's problem. He brings a meeting agenda to a knife fight. Like, he thinks that all of this is about process, about bringing people around the table. This is your brain on legalism and managerialism. But it's not party political. This is he's so bad, he is endangering our safety. No, it's hard to deny that, though.
Unsafe. because of that. Now, yes, absolutely, we look ever since the end of the Cold War, the so-called peace dividend. Well, that was definitely gone about 10, 15 years ago. And yeah, it's on the Conservative Party to have downgraded defence spending in the 2010s. But to be fair, there wasn't any money. Why not? Because we'd had an economic crash under Labour, and part of that was down to Gordon Brown. And in terms of freeing up the banks to do what they were doing. So I'm sorry, but this is on both major parties. But the large smelly brown stuff has hit the very large whirring fan in the last few years, and neither the Tories nor Labour now have got to grips with it. And I am utterly flabbergasted. How many experts in this field do they need to tell them that they need to act?
Well, apparently it's going to take a few more yet, and I do wonder what it will take for the penny to drop for this government. I mean, the whole debacle over Iran...
I think there's going to have to be a missile attack. I'm serious. Seriously, we're going to have to have a missile attack on one of our ships.
We can't even defend our own RAF bases in Cyprus. It takes us, they get attacked, and then 3 weeks later, our one destroyer shows up and then it immediately has to dock because it's got water supply issues. If you need a metaphor for how completely defenceless that we've been left, it doesn't get much better than that. It's
absolutely shocking. It really is. 10:28 is the time. Look, we've talked way too long, but we've only got two topics. There's so much going on. I want to hear from you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, in particular, obviously, on the abject failure to stop Rudy Kobana murdering those 3 little girls and attacking so many others. Abject failures by everybody concerned. But, should individuals face prosecution other than Rudy Kobana, including his parents? Give us a call. Let us know what you think. This is Talk.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He's not the statesman that our country needs. He's failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door and...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:31 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Matthew is in Warrington. Matthew, what do you want to say about this Southport report?
You know what, Julie? Hello again.
No.
I'm not going to say his name because it doesn't deserve the airspace.
AR. Well, that's the report referred to him, and the inquiry referred to him as AR throughout, didn't they?
Yeah, and this vile, horrible individual. I don't care the colour of his skin, his ethnic background, or what age it is. He should swing for what he did to them little girls. It upsets me to see them 3 little girls. As a dad of 2 girls myself, it's atrocious. These people who do these atrocities, they don't go down the side streets to the UFC gym and pull a knife out and try and kick off with the boys in there, because they wouldn't last 2 seconds. No. It's always the weak, it's always the girls, it's always they don't. They're cowards.
Yep.
They're not worthy. They're horrible, horrible people. They shouldn't be allowed to breathe. They should swing.
I have to say, I've never been in favour of capital punishment, but I'd be intensely relaxed about it in this case, because we know that the police said when they actually interviewed him and he asked how many girls had died, and they told him, and he smiled.
Horrible, vile man, evil. And if he thinks that when he does go to wherever he goes, he's with 40 virgins, well, good luck with that one, because I think you'll find it'll be a very dark place, and hopefully it'll be red hot as well, because it just sickens me. But to let this person, my son bought a knife once online, and I found it in his bed. He just bought it as, he thought it was, I don't know what was going on. I took him to the police with the knife. I took him myself, and I said,
you took your son to the police?
Yeah, well,
because you're a good dad.
Because I took him to the police, and I said, if you ever bring a knife like that in the house again, I said, not only the police took it off him, they give him a talking to. Yeah. And I said, you ever bring a police into a house again, you will never step through my door again. You do not. If you go, it's not acceptable. It's not how we do things in our family, in our society.
And what was his reason? Because I mean, a lot of kids say, look at it, they're worried, they either want to be cool or actually they're frightened of other kids with knives.
He was 14. He obviously does a bit of gaming. He buys things online. Yeah. I was shocked that it was. I'm an ex-military man, and I used to, we carried machetes and bellies, and you have a little. But the knife was horrendous. It was hooked, it was razor sharp, and he bought it online. And I was more disgusted that he could buy such a thing. Yeah. I was disgusted that he brought something in. I also get, he's a young lad, bit of testosterone, just thinks it's a bit funny. He wasn't showing it off, he just had it in his bedroom as more like an ornament. Yeah. But it wasn't happening. I'm sorry, can we just say, Parenting 101, mate. Parenting 101. You did absolutely the right thing, and presumably, police and you put the fear of God in him, and he's on the straight and narrow, no problem. He's a lovely lad. He's 22 years of age. He's been working with me today. He's polite. He's courteous.
There you go.
He works. He works in the supermarket.
Parenting works. Should the parents? Should ARs, according to AR's parents, should they be prosecuted?
Yeah, absolutely. They should. At the end of the day, they're accessory to murder.
Yeah.
If they knew what he was like, to say the lessons were learned, what lessons were learned? How many times did he break the rules? How many times was he carrying a knife?
Yeah.
You just look at him and you just think, you're all right, little wrong.
Well, again, we didn't see that picture until much later on, did we, of what he actually looked like at the time of the attack, as opposed to this little innocent Welsh choir boy at the age of 12 before things started going wrong. Matthew, I absolutely applaud you. Thank you so much for that call. Really appreciate that. Jules is on the line. He's in Bedford. Hi, Jules. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Well, I certainly can't follow that. What a star that guy was. Brilliant. Yeah. So you were talking about should people be prosecuted? And I think you mentioned the offence under the Terrorism Act. There's a couple of other options, one of which we know from recent conversations around Lord Mandelson, namely misconduct in a public office.
Yeah.
That might well be available. But there is another one which is not so familiar perhaps to most people, and that is gross negligence manslaughter.
Yeah.
So if you have a responsibility for something, be it a professional duty or a public professional duty, and you fail to discharge that so egregiously that somebody then dies as a result, gross negligence manslaughter, that potentially covers a sentence of life imprisonment for the most extreme
Jules,
cases.
you've got a very lawyerly air about you. Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm not, but I do work as an expert witness, so I've seen cases around this sort of topic. So yeah, perhaps those police that sent him home on a bus with a knife with a bedroom full of rice in, maybe that's where they could be looking. Absolutely,
yeah, it's extraordinary that no one was searching his bedroom. Although, by the way, as very clear in the report, the parents knew about the knives and they knew about the rice in, which is absolutely extraordinary. Jules, great call. I mean, both calls. Thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. 03444 499 1000 is a number for you to get in touch as well. Just a very quick response from Tom Slater, just to particularly to what Matthew had to say, but also Jules saying that there are other things, authorities, you've got a job to do, you don't do your job and someone dies as a result of it, and it was reasonable to think that someone might die. You absolutely should be prosecuted or don't do the job.
No, all avenues need to be explored here, and if there are gaps in the law, those gaps need to be filled. We need to create a situation in which public authorities, police are more fearful of the consequences of not doing their job rather than fearful of doing their job because of political correctness, back covering, protecting the rep of the institution, all of the things which have come before.
Absolutely.
So all of that needs to be explored now and pursued with gusto. Otherwise, we can't then turn around and be surprised when things like this happen again.
Absolutely. Right, up next, we're going to take a break. They're going to be talking to former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville to find out what he makes this, and in particular, should there be prosecutions? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:39 is the time. Let's talk more about the just extraordinary revelations in the Southport inquiry report from the phase one of the that inquiry published yesterday. Let's talk to Mike Neville. He's former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector and joins us now. Mike, you and I have spoken many times about this, you know, back in July 2024, after the sentencing. I mean, you name it. I mean, every single time we hear about this story and we learn more details, my blood runs cold, and I don't know whether to punch a wall or cry, to be honest with you, at the failings that we've seen. What has stood out for you in terms of what the inquiry chair, Sir Adrian Fulford, had to say yesterday?
Well, Julie, what stands out to me is that there's no mention whatsoever of racism. I searched for the head teacher's name, Joanne Hodson. I searched for all the things she said about she'd been told she was stereotyping, that she was picking on a black boy with a knife. None of this is mentioned whatsoever. And you only have to look at the Victoria Columbier case, Baroness cases reporting to the child grooming scandal, the Shawcross reporting to prevent, the Callocane case. All of these say that the professionals were more frightened of being accused of racism than anything else. And I think this is another case, and I'm absolutely surprised that it's nowhere is it mentioned in that report.
And yet a lot of the newspaper reports are picking up on it because going back with evidence that was publicly given in the inquiry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it stuns me that the head teacher, she said, I was shut up, I was shut down. She made those points that these professional people had tried to silence her, in effect. And she has been silenced because, you know, this report rightly blames the parents. It rightly blames the lack of interagency working, the lack of taking responsibility, the way they've blamed autism too much. But in no way does it mention this elephant in the room. And time again, we see people that, you know, the Manchester bomber, Manchester arena bombing. The security guard said there he didn't challenge a bail. He knew he was suspicious because he was afraid of being told he was stereotyped.
It's happening too. I said this at the beginning of the 10 o'clock hour. It's happening too often for it to be sort of one-off and something to ignore. And this is the thing. It's the idea. I mean, the quote from the head teacher, as you say, saying that she was accused of racially stereotyping a black boy with a knife. He was a boy with a knife. Doesn't matter what colour his skin is. But it's, again and again, it's the fact that they were going, yes, but we can't describe him as sinister. You can't say you think he's a threat because you know, you're just stereotyping him because he's black. No. I'm stereotyping him because he's got a knife and he's repeatedly taken a knife into school and he's killed, you know, and he's threatened to kill people. He has carried a hockey stick in and battered another kid to the ground. You know, he's carried a knife on the bus. He's threatening his parents. I mean, you know, who cares what colour his skin is? And it's extraordinary that they should care about that stuff and they don't seem to care about his potential victims. And I couldn't care less what colour their skin is either.
No, Julia, you're misunderstanding what they do. They don't care about the colour of his skin. They care about their careers and promotion. Right. Because they know if they say something, you'll be immediately shut down. Why do you think all those girls were groomed, killed, raped, molested and assaulted in all those towns? Why do you think that was? That was because people were more concerned about their next promotion in the social services or police or elsewhere. And the same in this inquiry, the same in Victoria, Columbia. Social workers allowed a girl, young girl, black girl, who cares what colour the girl is, she was beaten to death because of the same thing. Callocane wasn't put away in a mental institution or detained by professionals, both medical and police, because they were afraid of being said, oh, there's too many young black men in custody and all this. And we've got to get over this. And I think there has to be some prosecutions. But do you know what, Julia? I have no faith whatsoever there will be any prosecutions.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It was very clear. The lawyer for the family speaking on the media today was basically saying, you know, I will name the individuals. We know the names of the people who failed again and again. But you say it's about them furthering their careers, but it's also about that sort of wanting to be thought of as, you know, as one of them, or as the good people and the nice people. And something that Tom Slater, my guest in the studio, has pointed out as well. A lot of the time in these sorts of jobs, whether it's the police or social services or working at Prevent or all these other, in mental health service, huge number of different agencies that were involved. And he did, as Tom said, he didn't slip through the safety net. He just bounced off it again and again. I mean, he was in it constantly because he was constantly being seen as a risk, and then nothing was done. But again and again, these professionals, there might be a risk to them acting, but there's no risk to their careers from not acting. And we see that again across all these cases, Nottingham killer, you know, Salman Abedi, all of this, again and again. No one is going to be punished. No one's going to lose their job if they don't do anything. And this is like the paralysis that has afflicted all our public services. Like, don't do anything, don't take responsibility for anything, don't step over the line, stick within the committee who are making the decision, then you can't be blamed. And I feel sorry for some of these people because they are so fearful. And I try and, they're sitting there. I don't know if this guy's going to go on and kill someone. We're talking with, after the event. But they're making too many mistakes, and their balance of judgment, their balance of probabilities, they're getting it wrong too often, and they're getting it wrong for the wrong reasons.
Well, the trouble is, Julia, all those people in all those meetings, whether they're police or social services or Prevent, will tell us that they're absolutely committed to diversity. It's they'll almost worship it. But what they're not committed to is diversity of thought. They'll never have me on that panel because I would put my hand up and say, I've noticed something here. There's something really not right. But they don't want the person who's going to tell the emperor that his new clothes are in fact not on him at all. He's naked. All these people think the same way. Yeah. And it's we hear about, say, for example, in the past, or the Yorkshire Ripper inquiry, it was all white men who looked like me investigating the Yorkshire Ripper, so they all thought the same, and it all went very badly. And what we've gone to is like another extreme now, where everybody thinks the same again in a different way. It's just a different thing that they're thinking. And we need a balance. Yeah, we need somebody like me. We need a lefty lawyer. We need whatever else, because we all bring something to the table. But what happens is they all sit there shaking hands, agreeing with each other, and passing it on to the next agency without taking responsibility. And here we have a disaster. And my heart goes out to the parents, not only the children who were killed, those three lovely girls, but all the parents and children who utterly psychologically damaged.
Yeah.
I've got 3 daughters. I just can't imagine this sort of stuff.
No, I mean, exactly. I mean, this is the thing, we always talk about those 3 little girls, and my gosh, we need to keep saying their names. But forget, you know, another 8 were stabbed, many of them, I mean, dozens of times, and still survived, but life-changing injuries, 2 adults as well, but all the other children who were there, all the parents who were traumatised. I mean, I'm not sure I'd ever be able to let my kid out of the house again. I just think I would have been following her down the road like a metre away. The trust, you know, your life is devastated forever, and every other parent that summer worried about their kid going to a kids club and enjoying themselves, and we keep talking about how kids are wrapped up in cotton wool, people are like their kids to play and have freedom. Well, this is why, because people are so terrified. Do you think that the parents, Alfonso, Rudakabana and Letitia, what's her name, Muzaguri, do you think that, I mean, they should actually personally face prosecution?
Yeah, I think they could do, but as we say, the chances of doing this under the law are very limited. You know, they'd have to bring in retrospective legislation. I think the best thing we could do is deport them, really. You know, why are they here? Why are the Abedi family here? Why are these people who just bring utter misery and death to this country here? They bring nothing of value. All they do is drag us down. So best they go back to Rwanda and sort themselves out there, and then after 60 years he can be sent back there as well. Again,
I still don't understand why. Okay, I know he was under 18, but you know what, you commit a crime like that, you ain't coming out in anything.
I was a soldier at 16, Julia, so I could take responsibility at that age.
Absolutely. Mike Neville, thank you for joining us, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville there. 10:48 is the time. Up next, going to be talking about another load of people who don't do their jobs properly, the French police, when it comes to watching rather than doing anything about these people smugglers putting migrants onto those dinghies, just doing absolutely nothing. But don't worry, we're still paying them millions of pounds to not actually act. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He is failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot. Yeah. He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door, and away we go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, the Prime Minister has set up a new committee to basically try and deal with what's going on in the conflict in Iran, and therefore I'm sure the Strait of Hormuz will be opened within, frankly, hours, because we all know that sitting around talking with Keir Starmer is definitely the way of getting things done. Although I think many of us will find it a little bit strange that the Prime Minister thinks that he can have any say at all over what is happening in the Middle East, when apparently he can't even do anything about patrolling or keeping safe the Channel. You know, that little bit of sea right next to us. And certainly ain't getting any help from the French, because he's a big fan of people talking and negotiating, isn't he? But apparently all that talk and negotiating with the French hasn't actually done anything at all. Oh, which is why we've got yet again images of French police watching on as migrants wade into the sea to board a UK-bound set of dinghies. Just days, by the way, after 4 people died doing just that. Well, let's talk about this with Robert Bates. He's Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control and joins us once again. Good morning to you, Robert.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Nice weather out there, not very windy, looks nice. I'm going to guess we're going to see a whole load of boats today. We've already topped the 5,000 mark for this year alone. They keep on coming. All of this money and extension of the schemes we've got with the French in terms of them stopping boats, none of this seems to actually lead to any, actual boats being stopped.
No, because it's all very well and good having an agreement on paper, but if one party isn't prepared to actually adhere to what was agreed, then it's never going to work. And unfortunately, both Labour and Conservative governments have fallen into this trap of actually trusting that the French would operate in good faith. This is a country that has its own illegal migrant problem, and it's really sort of using the safety valve of the Channel to alleviate some of its own problems. I think we're reaching a point now where you see these boats are increasingly overcrowded, that actually we need to be looking towards entering French waters and taking a boat back to French territory.
Well, this is what Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has actually suggested as part of these negotiations that we'll have. OK, but again, I don't know why the French boats can't do that, but OK, the British boats can do that. The French said, no, you can't come into our waters. And I mean, we let the Russians into ours, so I don't know why we're that bothered. But basically, we can deliver them back. But basically, the French boats, such as they pay attention, they escort them to the middle of the Channel, and then it becomes our responsibility. Can we not just say at that point, here you are, French Coast Guard, you've got them in your sights. We're heading back to Britain, and we ain't taking them. I mean, that would be the French responsibility, wouldn't it?
It would be, and I think actually, given that these journeys are becoming more dangerous by the very nature of there being fewer boats but more migrants piled onto each boat, I think we can maybe make a case that actually we're doing it for humanitarian reasons and to, hell with French concerns about us impinging on their territorial waters or so forth. I mean, the French have previously actually stopped boats from leaving their waters when they are overcrowded. They've done it when there's been an emergency and stepped in. Yeah. It seems they've reverted to type now and are sat on the beaches fiddling their thumbs whilst taking hundreds of millions of pounds off the British taxpayer. But I think unfortunately now this relationship is broken down. The French really aren't prepared to play ball, not just on, of course, actually stopping the boats, but when it comes to the one-in, one-out deal as well. We've been absolutely done over when it comes to the numbers being returned, and again, that's a scheme that looks like it's completely failed.
Well, let's talk about this, because sending boat migrants back to France now costs. This is mind blowing. This is the one in, one out scheme. It's basically an exchange scheme, isn't it? Because we also know I think it's half a dozen who've come back to Britain afterwards, and a lot of smugglers now, they're just saying if you do get deported under this scheme, you can basically get a free journey back. Sending boat migrants back to France now costs a whopping, this is mind-blowing, this figure, Robert, £48,800 each. One recent flight could have cost taxpayers £1.52 million. A plane from Stansted to Paris, which carried 32 male migrants along with 73 guards and 2 paramedics back in January. This is analysis by the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford. Shows the cost for enforced removals has rocketed from around £15,000 per person a decade ago. How does getting rid of these people? They arrive on a boat. Hello, you haven't got any right to be here. Right, we're going to put you in a detention camp. We're going to put you on a flight back to Paris. There you go, done. How does that cost 48 grand?
Well, we've gold-plated the process. It's not just, we've
gold-plated the jets as well.
Well, it's not just that it's the actual flight, it's of course the staffing, but then it's the fact that we're paying for leisure activities, welfare support and so forth whilst they're in detention facilities. These are basically sort of holiday camps. And then you've also got the legal cost of having to wrangle them as well, which is escalating and way out of control. And this is unfortunately actually now why the Labour Party has somehow decided that it's a good idea just to throw money at illegal migrants sort of as a bribe to hope them to leave, because it's costing so much to deport them. So the answer to that surely is to just bring down the cost of deportation and to strip away all the excess costs that are making it so burdensome. But when it comes to the one in, one out deal, this was something that I think everyone knew was never going to work. It was pie in the sky that it would ever reach levels that would be in any way having an actual impact and have a deferential effect. And as you point out, the people smugglers now are offering these kind of deals that kind of, have another go offer. This is something that really doesn't get to the very bottom of what we know is driving this problem, which is the huge pull factors of Britain being such a soft touch.
Yeah.
And of course, when France sends us migrants in exchange, they then have to be sort of supported, welfare, long-term fiscal costs as a result of that as well, bringing over family members eventually as well. It's a deal that was always going to be a rum deal, even if it worked for Britain, and it's not working, and it's, leading to the boats continuing to come across.
I mean, it is utterly laughable. It really, really is. And it is extraordinary, actually. The government are so convinced they're going to be dealing with this that they're having talks with companies about a £10 billion contract for asylum accommodation that runs all the way to 2036.
Yes,
so they're going to solve the problem, right? They're going to stop the boats, they're going to smash the gangs. But for some reason, we're going to need asylum accommodation costing 10 billion quid up to 2036.
Yeah, it's hardly a vote of confidence, is it? And I think that really actually indicates that, it's not just in terms of they've decided they're leaving the hotels behind, but now they've got to sort of scrabble around, find houses of multiple occupancy, find old student accommodation blocks, find, military bases and so forth. And that is actually going to be a very costly process of finding those premises, apart from actually then housing individuals.
Well, exactly. I know, again, I've discovered that I've got a second hotel near me that is, again, in a nice area. The hotel is now asylum seekers, and they're using up those hotels. But I would rather they're in hotels we know where they are, as opposed to competing with local people. For the bedsits, for the student accommodation. There aren't enough ex-military camps and the like for them. At the end of the day, they shouldn't be here in the first place. This is absolutely untenable to continue, isn't it? The British public are not. I mean, even the bleeding hearters at this point are going, yeah, this doesn't work. Meanwhile, by the way, you've got the Green Party who basically think we should have open borders and anyone can come here, no one gets deported, and pay them money when they get here. I mean, and they'd be entitled to a home as well. I mean,
and citizenship, basically like that as well.
4 million people are going to come over in the first week if they got elected.
It's the Green Party are one of the most terrifying political entities I've ever seen in Britain. I think actually the more we start to scrutinise them, I think it is actually essential, because what they're offering, especially on immigration, putting aside all the legalising drugs and so forth, is so seismic, and it would fundamentally destroy Britain fiscally, culturally and socially. And I think they would do it with a sense of glee as well, which is the most terrifying element of it. There's almost a willful vandalism streak running through them when it comes to open borders. This idea of someone arriving here, even without a visa, and then effectively being expedited onto citizenship, it would destroy the whole notion of a nation state.
Now, again, a country without borders isn't a country. It's really that simple. Robert Bates, you do fine work there at the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you very much. Brief word for Tom Slater, but I promise we'll come back to this in the next half hour.
Well, I think it's just the folly, really, of trying to get the French to enforce their own border is probably what we're coming down to this. Yes, you can put in more money. Yes, you can add some more inducements. Yes, you can try to put more of the pressure on them. But essentially, every migrant that leaves Calais for Britain is
good
one
news to them.
fewer problem.
Except lots of those wouldn't have entered France, where they've treated really badly. They wouldn't have entered France if they weren't able to get to Britain, if you ask me. Anyway, so much more to talk about. We're going to talk more about the Southport inquiry report. We're going to talk more about defence and more about migrants, and plenty more besides. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past 11 is the time. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. If you have missed anything of the show in the first hour, frankly, you need to go back and look at my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, never have to miss a thing, and you can catch up on all the conversation. Coming up, we're going to be discussing more about that Southport report and basically how the attack could easily have been prevented if, frankly, the parents and pretty much anyone who came into contact with Axel Rugabana had done their job properly. We're also going to be talking why government advisor who wrote the government strategic defence review for Keir Starmer just last year, ex-NATO chief, ex-Labour minister Lord George Robertson, is saying that there is a corrosive complacency towards defence and our security right now is in peril. Is the government going to act? That and plenty more coming up besides. I'm delighted to say that Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, is joining me in the studio. Good morning once again to you. So much to talk about. I'll put the question to everybody, and you're welcome to come, as you know, get in touch on any of the big topics, but talked extensively in the last hour about that Southport attack report. We covered it on the show yesterday as well, and it's in all the papers, and it's just utterly soul-destroyingly grim and awful. You don't know whether to cry or whether to, let's say, punch a wall that makes you so angry in terms of the abject failure of Axel Rugabana's parents to do their moral duty, the police, the social services, the mental health services, you name it, prevent everybody is at fault, and there's no doubt at all in my mind that the lawyer for the families of the three little girls who were killed by Axel Rugabana that day, B.B. King, Elsie Dot Stankham and Alistair Silva Aguera. Chris Walker is their family's lawyer, and he says he wants everybody, every individual involved in this, he wants them to face criminal prosecution for their failures. I want to know your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. There's no doubt at all, Tom. I mean, many people are just appalled by what's happened, and the information that's kind of leaked out since, of course, the claim that this was a boat migrant who'd come from abroad, and it wasn't. It was a Cardiff choir boy, Axel Rugabana. Well, he was a Cardiff choir boy until he was 12 or 13, and then the authorities got involved. Carried a knife to school on 10 occasions. Attacked a couple of children at school with a hockey stick. I mean, deliberately brought it in to attack kids. Carried a knife on a bus. He was looking at the most extraordinarily violent imageries. He had downloaded an Al-Qaeda manual for terrorism. He had ricin, the poison, in his home. His parents knew every single bit of this. He didn't leave the home at all over a 2-year period, other than to go and attack people, including the attack in July 2024, which left those 3 girls slaughtered, 8 other girls severely injured, many other children and 2 adults injured as well, many other children traumatised for life. And his parents failed to act. It's absolutely devastating. Lots of talk about how they could actually be prosecuted under the Terrorism Act. One of our callers earlier pointed out that actually a lot of the authorities could be done for gross negligence, manslaughter, the failure in their public duty in their jobs, misconduct in public office. Now, Chris Walker, the lawyer, says he was prepared to identify key individuals from 5 agencies. He says he finds their behaviour unacceptable. This was Prevent, Lancashire Police, Lancashire Social Services, CAMS, the Mental Health Service, and FCAMS. This is Forensic Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, and basically saying we know the names of the individuals, and he says, if necessary, if we're not satisfied, I'll be naming them publicly. I'll be bringing out in the public domain once more their individual failings. He says the families are aghast at the abject failure. Now, again and again, there were concerns about Axel Rugabana. Well, he was autistic, so it was apparently okay to be behaving this way. That a head teacher at the school he was referred to said that when she wrote about thinking he was sinister, she was afraid of him. She was accused of racially stereotyping a black boy with a knife. we've seen again and again and again the Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane, the Manchester Arena attacker Salman Abedi wasn't approached because by a bodyguard because he didn't want to be caught racially stereotyping a man of Middle Eastern appearance. Valdo Calacane was a black man. They didn't want who was schizophrenic and dangerous, but they were locking up too many black men with mental health problems, so he was on the streets. This keeps happening and no one takes responsibility. Reports are written, people go to funerals, everyone rubs their hands and sheds a few tears, and then no lessons are learned and nothing changes. What needs to change, Tom?
I think what we need is a real cultural shift within society and certainly within our institutions, because there are so many common threads to all of this. I mean, there's plain old incompetence, of course, there's people who didn't do their jobs properly, but one pattern that you see in this case and many others is that a whole mess of political correctness, of kind of over concern about the safeguarding needs of dangerous individuals rather than the people that they might do harm to, has contributed to a situation in which people are more terrified of being accused of being called racist than, say, stopping the industrial scale rape of girls by Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. They're more scared of being called racist than taking a paranoid schizophrenic like Valdo Calacane off the streets rather than allowing him to go and murder 3 people in cold blood in Nottingham. And in the case of Ruda Cabana, so terrified of being called racist, so terrified of being called ableist maybe, so terrified of just doing their job that they happily allowed one of the most depraved attacks on the most vulnerable people imaginable in society, young girls at a dance class in Southport, to be killed.
And it's a miracle that it wasn't a dozen girls that died. A miracle.
You were talking earlier about the sentencing remarks when Ruda Cabana was sent down. There's a lot of details in there which haven't really been openly reported in the press because the families would rather that they weren't.
And we covered some of that. It was only, and as did lots of newspapers, and then the message went out from the families that they would rather that a lot of this detail wasn't out there. Now, I disagree with that in lots of ways. I think it's important that detail is out, but in terms of the extensive nature of the attacks on the girls.
It is to say the scale of the depravity is even worse than you might think if you haven't trawled through those documents and seen the full documentation. And it could have been avoided. Of course, there are always situations in which you have lunatics, depraved killers who do genuinely, to use the common cliche, slip through the net. That wasn't the case here. That wasn't the case with Valdo Calacane. That wasn't the case with Salman Abedi. That wasn't the case with Ali Harbi Ali, the terrorist who stabbed David Amos to death and ended up... It turned out he went through the PREVENT programme and the test programme, and they cleared him because they thought he was a reformed character.
But again,
how does this keep happening?
And again, in London Bridge, I can see it out the window. The guy who's reformed in prison and brought along to a meeting to talk about reforming prisoners, and then starts attacking everybody. Again, most of the time it is just a miracle we're not seeing huge numbers of deaths. I mean, you said they're not slipping through the net, they're just kind of bouncing off it and bouncing on it. And as we were discussing with Mike Neville, former DCI, earlier, there's this element where people just simply, they're afraid to do their jobs. They're just afraid of being accused of racism. They're afraid, but there's no punishment for them when they do get it wrong. And I've been saying for years in terms of people, if you do a job where you have to live with the consequences, you should actually live with the consequences. Like whether it's Grenfell Tower, whether you're approving flammable materials on a building. Well, yeah, you want to do that, that's fine. And when people die, you go to prison for life. But that's up to you. People need to live with the consequences of the decisions, and if you don't want to live with those consequences, you don't want to take responsibility, don't do that job. And a lot of these people do a very tough job. But you know what? I'm not going to sympathise with you doing a really tough job if you ain't very good at it. If you're a surgeon, you've got a tough job. But you know what? Loads of the people you operate on die because you're not very good at it. We would take you off the wards, right? We wouldn't let you operate. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. NHS Trust would cover that up for 10 years until there was a public inquiry, and then we'd find out about it, and then lessons would be learnt, Tom. That's what keeps happening in this country.
That's the thing with institutions, they try and protect themselves. I think there's two sides to the ledger here, one of which, of course, is making sure that when people are effectively kind of criminally liable, or should be treated as criminally liable for these horrific attacks, abuses, whatever, that they do see justice. I think on the other side is that making sure that people who are within these institutions who want to do the right thing feel that they'll be backed up. The classic example here, which is in the report itself in the second part of it, about the now head teacher of the Acorn School, the kind of school for troubled kids, basically, that Ruda Cabana was sent to after he was excluded for taking a knife to school 10 times. She tried to raise the alarm. She did talk about how sinister she felt his motivations were. They insisted on those lines, the word sinister in particular, being struck from her account because they felt it was inappropriate, and it also fed into this racialisation of him as a black boy with a knife. She tried to do the right thing, but she was prohibited from doing so because of this culture of political correctness. She wasn't given the necessary backup to raise the alarms. It's the two sides.
Also,
of it.
I would have thought
people who want to do the right thing.
Senior teacher in a unit like that, I would trust her judgment because she's seen it all before. In the same way, you trust judgment of experienced police officers going, "That's a wrong 'un. That's someone who's dangerous," and a lot of it is past experience. It's going on a hunch. They've seen it before. They know what they're doing, though.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that in the course of the past few decades, there's been all this kind of focus on safeguarding and process and checks and so on and so forth to protect particularly kind of vulnerable young people in schools and other institutions. But on some level, you do have to rely on the nous and the insight and the experience of police officers or of teachers. And I think one thing, this whole kind of array of box-ticking exercises and plans and, you know, things that you can refer someone to, often what gets lost in that is actually decisive decisions made by people using their judgment. And the kind of buck passing that you see enumerated in the report is telling of that. If you just have a million different committees, a million different schemes, a million different boards and so on and so forth, it's actually a lot easier for people to slip through than it would be if you just had proper institutions that knew what their role was and were backed up when they raised concerns. And that would be a much better
Talking about the parents there, it was a really interesting thread on X by a former detective called Donna Louise Flowers. I'm going to read you some of it. It's quite a few expletives, understandable, I think, from somebody who would have seen the devastating impact of this. And basically talk about the Southport inquiry. She says, I'm not talking about the agencies right now, I'm talking about the parents because somebody has to. Former detective, 21 years in the force, she goes, I know what I'm looking at. She says, people are going to be talking about, oh, must have been so hard for the parents, what were they supposed to do? She says, I'll tell you what they were supposed to do, their job as parents, that's what. His parents knew he had ricin in his bedroom, a biological toxin 6,000 times more poisonous than cyanide, an Al-Qaeda manual, they knew about the knives, they machete, they personally signed for themselves. Bows and arrows, a small arsenal in their house, and they reported none of it. A week before Southport, he tried to leave the house to attack his old school. His dad stopped him. We knew about that already. Basically begged him not to go. Then they did absolutely nothing else. They didn't call the police. They didn't tell a single agency. The dad just texted his wife, our child needs to be protected. Not those children, his, she says. The day of the attack, they watched him leave. Same outfit as the week before, same weapon, same direction. They saw the empty knife packaging on the way out, and they did nothing. So she says, the agencies failed over the years, but every single agency that failed on incomplete information. The father in particular was deliberately withholding from them. He said nothing, and that's not the same thing. She said he didn't just stay silent, he actively blocked a safeguarding report from reaching the youth offending team. He withheld information about weapons from mental health services. He wasn't a frightened father, he was interfering deliberately and repeatedly. So when people say how hard it was for them, well, imagine if it was your daughter in that dance class, she says. And she's just making the point that, you know, their father sat on information that could have saved those little girls' lives. And I've got to be honest with you, I absolutely agree with every single word. And she says, you know, the primary chair said it was almost certain the attack would have been prevented if the parents had spoken up that final week. CPS says the evidence doesn't meet the threshold for charges, but she says he knew about the weapons, he knew about the ricin, he withheld it from agencies, he interfered with safeguarding, he watched his son leave the house, he did nothing. And she says under the Terrorism Act 2000, Section 38B, there is a law that makes it a criminal offence to stay silent when you know someone is planning terrorism. It is the law. You've committed a criminal offence, maximum sentence of 10 years if you do not try and prevent an act of terrorism. The son, Axel Rudagabana, was convicted under the Terrorism Act. Part of the crimes he was charged for was because he possessed an Al-Qaeda training manual. So if it was terrorism enough to convict the son, the father knowing about that manual means that he must have he could be charged with that crime and must be charged as well. I mean, a biological weapon, stockpiling knives, an Al-Qaeda manual. He should have gone to the authorities. His son should have been locked up. He should have been in a safe unit. None of this would have happened. We would never have known this child's name as he was a child then. A few weeks, wasn't it, a week or so before his 18th birthday. The parents need to be prosecuted. We spoke to a dad a little bit earlier on the show who called in. I mean, Matthew, all credit to him, ex-military himself, finds a knife in his 14-year-old son's room, takes him straight to the police. That's what he did. He took him straight to the police and said, you bring a knife into my home again, you never cross this threshold again. That's being a parent. Yeah, and that's one, it's very unusual for a report like this to single out the parents in the way that they have. And because the evidence is just so devastating. I mean, we've talked about the arsenal that he'd put together. We talked about how, you know, if anything, when it came with
disputes with the school. They were just routinely taking their son's side, even at points kind of accusing that there had been some sort of stigma attached to him, that he was being bullied, which the school flatly refused, by the way. These are very small classrooms, there's about 4 or 5 pupils. They were under constant watch because they were all, for one, in one measure or another, kind of troubled children, so needed that level of almost constant surveillance.
Which is a bit of a giveaway.
And then on the day itself, the fact that the timeline is absolutely devastating. This monster hadn't left the house for a couple of years. The last time he had done so, it was also to try and kill someone. He shows up on the landing, puts a hood over his head, puts a mask on his face. He's clearly kind of concealing things in long sleeves, leaves the house. Nothing is said about it. His mum just said, I think he's going for a walk. He's waiting for a cab for about 10 minutes, which the report specifically says, if they'd have just done the normal thing, which is to rush and say, where the hell are you going? That could have been enough time to disrupt this. As soon as he's in that cab, it's over. There's no way that the police probably would have been able to know where he was going, intervene, find him. But again, this window was missed. But if we're honest, how many times does it take for any reasonable member of this society to say, we need to do something about this? And yes, there's the failings of the police and of the education system and prevent and everything. Of course. But this is at least half of the problem, because at the end of the day, the police aren't always going to be there.
Do
at the
your
end of the day,
bloody job.
You do have to rely on
if your kid is out shoplifting, if your kid is stealing stuff, if your kid is ever carrying a knife, if your kid is doing any of that stuff, frankly, your kid is being antisocial, feet on the seats on the train and not getting up for a pregnant woman. That's you. That's on you. It's on you not doing your job as a parent. If your kid is looking at terrorism manuals, got poison, a deadly toxin, and has got machetes and knives and has been attacking people, I mean, seriously, do your job. It's mind-blowing. Give us a call. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is a number to get in touch. Look, let's talk about some other topics as well, because there is so much to talk about. Lord Robertson, the former Labour Defence Secretary back in Blair's day, author of this Prime Minister's Strategic Defence Review, he is giving a speech today. Says the UK security is in peril. Countries' leaders have shown corrosive complacency towards defence. He's used non-military experts in the Treasury of what he calls vandalism, basically saying you cannot build up the defence, so we need to do 28 billion needs to be spent in the next few years minimum, while you've got a ballooning welfare bill. And he's saying this all at the time when Keir Starmer is convening a new committee to look at Middle East conflict, because my God, we should always just have another meeting. I mean, he could be running the prevent strategy, couldn't he? Just another lawyer, another lanyard wearer, having another meeting and not doing anything. But we are absolutely, not only are we vulnerable, we're a laughing stock on the world stage. We ain't a world power anymore. We cannot defend ourselves or our interests or help our allies in anywhere in the world, let alone, frankly, we can't even patrol Channel, for goodness sake. When Russian naval vessels are there with these shadow fleet tankers full of oil that's been sanctioned, we're an absolute laughing stock. But the Prime Minister has set up another committee, so that's okay.
Exactly. It's all going to be sorted out in a matter of hours, if not days. This is the problem with having a middle manager in power. He can't make decisions. All of the reporting on how Keir Starmer operates is identical. This is a man who, yes, likes to cover the detail and read his briefs long into the night and so on and so forth, but he's incapable of making any decisions because he's incapable of really any true thought. He's also clearly doesn't have much of a kind of political principle or hinterland to speak of. The fact that during the crisis that Donald Trump puts the question to him about using the bases, and Starmer allegedly reportedly says, I need to talk to my team. Could you imagine Winston Churchill saying something like that? Could you imagine anyone who'd like to think themselves as a leader?
Just convene a focus group.
Exactly. Of course you need collaborative government on some level. Of course, same time, the buck stops at the Prime Minister. In matters of war and peace, you do have to make decisions.
But he's being hailed by people as by neighbours, just like he's this wonderful statesman who made the right call. He didn't make a right call. He just fuddled his way, befuddled fiddling.
And in prevarication as well. He wanted to let the Americans use the bases for quote-unquote defensive actions immediately, but he couldn't get it past Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband, who didn't want to look too close to Trump. So he pulled back, and then only to go back in the other direction as well. This is not someone... You could tolerate someone like Keir Starmer if the economy was all right
and he was competent.
was times of peace. you know, it might have been a rocky couple of years, but it'd be fine. Right now, it's dangerous.
He's so the wrong personality to be in that job. But this is the thing: there is an urgency right now in terms of the threat posed by, you know, all the different countries who conspire against us. We are under attack. The amount of senior, you know, defence people and security people who we have on the show who are, you know, former heads of MI6 and, I mean, you know, former heads of the army. Call me old-fashioned. I think they know more about this stuff than Keir Starmer. I'm going out on a limb here. And they are, to a man and a woman, they are saying, we are facing threats right now. We are basically under attack right now, and we're doing nothing about it. I just find it absolutely mind-blowing. And I think peeing off our most important economic and defence and security ally in America, I don't care what you think about Donald Trump. I don't care what you think about the Iran war. You stay under the American umbrella, because that's the only one that we've got right now, because we ain't got our own. Our own has got a load of spokes missing and is flailing about in the wind. And it's just mind-blowing that we are in this situation. But it's been brought there by an awful lot of politicians. And this is because the public doesn't want a load of money spent on defence. They want to know we've got big defences. They want to know we're strong. But they don't actually want their taxes to be going on defence, because they could go on nurses or teachers or mending potholes or any of that. Trouble is, you know, an awful lot of our money is not spent on those useful things. An awful lot of money is spent on a ballooning welfare bill, and that is something Lord Robertson actually talks about. You know, you cannot have this ballooning welfare bill. And we know we have got a Prime Minister who doesn't really believe anything. We've got a whole load of Labour cabinet ministers and Labour backbenchers, none of whom have ever had a job in the private sector. Barely any of them in the military. And there's one, you know, one of the armed forces ministers who everyone's very impressed with, thinks is a future leader because he can actually stand up straight and straighten his tie. I mean, come on, you know, that's the level we're at. A load of people used to be. They just basically worked at, you know, they were special advisors. They've done an arts degree at a second-rate university. They've worked at a charity, social. And they're like, okay, fine, great, but they don't understand the great, you know, important roles of the state. And basically, they just want to put everyone on the payroll. More benefits here, more benefits there. Oh, you had kids you can't afford. Have some more. Have another $3.5 grand for each of your kids. Don't go to work. Don't be silly. They're just throwing money around, our money, not theirs, like confetti. And they don't understand that. There are some things that aren't optional, and defence of the realm is not optional. It's one of the things you have to spend money on.
It's one of the things that's gone by the wayside as well, in the sort of complacency and the kind of end of history daydream that people have been in for many decades now. We're just going to
resolve everything by chatting to people.
Exactly, everything's going to be fine. People have to recognise that what's often called as the kind of post-Cold War peace dividend, that period in which it felt like conflict, certainly in Europe and the West, on our own territory was over, and something that didn't really need to be bothered with. To the extent that even existed, was a very brief period.
2001 should have been a wake-up call.
Well, this is exactly,
2014 invasion of Crimea, another wake-up call.
This is so it was always a bit of a fantasy to begin with. But if you look at the sweep of human history, the idea that you can allow national defence to wither on the vine, and that's okay. The idea that you can just plough all of your money and resources excuse me, into a welfare system which, as we know, is not even really getting to the people who really need it. It's getting to a lot of people who frankly don't need it and end up being trapped in that system, is such an anachronism. And it's because so many of our politicians, I think, have no sense of history and have no sense of anything outside their own very narrow remit that they end up with.
And I'd like to point out, crucially, that even in the late 30s, when Neville Chamberlain was busy waving his little white piece of paper and basically selling out Europe to the Nazis, we were spending, I think, double what we're spending now as a percentage of GDP on our defence. I think that's a bit of a wake-up call about, you know, even when we were trying to go for peace, and you know, that's what we were doing. You know, it didn't just start under Winston Churchill. I also just want to talk to you briefly about what is going on in the Middle East. The US is now blockading the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, technically, they're blockading any ship that's arriving from an Iranian port or going to an Iranian port. Basically, the US have accused Iran of economic terrorism. That's what J.D. Vance had to say in the Strait. Tehran has warned of widespread consequences. I mean, you know, if they decide to start firing on the, you know, energy facilities and particularly production facilities or water salination plants across the Middle East, then, you know, what's going to happen? Who do you think is going to win this? Because this is kind of, on one level, we're technically in this ceasefire, we're kind of in a game of chicken, aren't we, right now?
No, absolutely. And it's really difficult to work out where this is going to go next, not least because of the fact that the American position seems to be all over the place. I mean, it began with, the past week began with Donald Trump suggesting that the Strait of Hormuz is not really his problem because of the fact that America doesn't get much of its hydrocarbons through there, and this is Europe's issue to deal with. It then became a big sticking point in negotiations. He was kind of flying a kite for the idea that maybe Iran and the US could look after it together on a kind of joint basis. And now we suddenly have this much more kind of confrontational approach. As ever, it's not entirely clear what's going to happen next, because it's not entirely clear what the outcome, or what the desired outcome is in all of this. But it just shows that this is going to run and run and run. And even if we end up with a kind of very shaky peace for a period of time, the underlying tensions and issues are not going anywhere.
No,
and the global economy is going to continue to reap the whirlwind.
The economic hit, and we were talking to Liam Halligan, about this the other day, or yesterday on the show, as an economist, about, actually an awful lot of the oil and the supplies, the fertiliser and everything that is being used right now around the world, bought at exorbitant prices. That is stuff that had already left those Iranian ports before that blockade began. And right now, there ain't nothing getting through for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. We are in a different territory altogether. Just finally, I want to ask you also about Donald Trump. He's got into a battle. I mean, who doesn't he get in a battle with? He's now in a battle with the Pope, and it would appear, was it 1.5 billion Catholics in the country, in the world, sorry. He posted an image of him basically as Jesus. We can put the image up if you're watching on YouTube or connected device now. He's healing the sick, American flag, and he's in a big robe. Basically, a lot of people reacted and said this is really outrageous. He says, oh, no, it shows him as a doctor. That's what he thought it was. I mean, a load of rubbish. Of course, he didn't think that. But he's been very, very critical of the Pope. He's called him weak and terrible. The Pope, of course, he's an American, very recently chosen by, the will of God, obviously. Hailed by Donald Trump. The Americans have got the Pope, English-speaking Pope. But, I mean, I'm kind of with Donald Trump when it comes to the Pope. I'm a bit fed up of popes, whoever they are, doing this whole, we need peace, we should be talking, we don't want war. No, we don't want war. But we also don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons. So we don't want war in Gaza, but we also don't want, Hamas to be, basically murdering and taking hostages from people in Israel. So what are your options? And Pope's doing this whole religiously Archbishop of Canterbury's in the same, doing an awful lot of this, like, oh, if only everyone was nice, wouldn't it be better? Well, yes, it would be, but they're not. So what are you going to do about it? I'm kind of with Trump on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And it's also the case that this sort of peacenik approach to things, whether it's coming from the Holy Father or for various people in politics, it's on the one sense quite naive to the realities of hard politics and war. It's also the fact that if in the context of, say, something like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we had the kind of the late Pope often sort of again calling for peace and so on and so forth. Just sort of calling for peace and getting around the table in that context can often just mean emboldening the aggressor. So it's not as simple as just laying all this out. Donald Trump falling out with the Pope is probably bound to happen. He falls out of absolutely everyone. To be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if he did post this image without fully understanding what it was getting at, because whilst he likes to pose as a Christian, he doesn't really live his life like that. And I remember back in 2015 when he was asked by some of the press what his favourite book of the Bible was, he said, all of them.
Yes.
Because he clearly couldn't even recall the name of one of them. So it wouldn't surprise me.
But I don't think the imagery is helpful. No. I really don't think that. I don't. Look, I think you're an atheist as well. I'm an atheist, but I don't believe in actually, deliberately offending or mocking people's religious icons and beliefs and prophets. And I don't have to, agree with someone's religious views to say, can we just show a little bit of respect?
Yeah. You should be allowed to do it, but should you do it is a question for yourself.
Absolutely crucial. 11:30 is the time. We're going to go to a guest up next, and we're going to get your calls. Got lots of amazing calls on Southport. A lot of you, just as angry as I am, and any frankly sane person is, about the abject failures to stop Axel Rudy Gabana and who should be prosecuted, including his parents. Your thoughts on that, very welcome. 0344 499 1000. Up next, so we are going to be talking to retired British Army Colonel Tim Collins about that defence warning as well. This is Talk.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He's not the statesman that our country needs. He's failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot. He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door and...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:33 is the time. Promise going to get your calls. Plenty of time for them in about 10-15 minutes time. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you getting in touch about the Southport inquiry, what we've learned from that report, and in terms of the who should be prosecuted. But also you might want to get in touch about what my next guest is going to have to say. He is Tim Collins, OBE, retired British Army Colonel, and he joins us now to talk about all things defence. A very, very good morning to you, Tim.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, it's another day. Genuinely, it's getting to this point on the show, but another day, another incredibly knowledgeable, experienced figure, long involvement in defence, whether as a minister or as a military chief, telling the country, telling the Prime Minister, we are not spending enough on defence and we need to do more. We need to do it urgently. This time it's George Robertson, now Lord Robertson, former Labour Defence Secretary. He was the NATO chief as well for many years. And he's the author of this government's Strategic Defence Review, published last year. And he says the UK security is in peril, his words. The country's leaders have shown over years corrosive complacency towards defence. He's accused non-military experts in the Treasury, he says, of, in his words, vandalism, and says we simply cannot basically fund our defence with a ballooning welfare bill. Tim, what do you make of what he has to say?
Well, someone with the gravitas of Lord Robertson speaks out. I think the nation should be paying attention. This is a former Secretary General, as you say, of NATO, and one of the a cabinet member under Tony Blair. And this is probably one of our elder statesmen. Yes. Someone we really ought to be paying attention to, because there's very few left in politics with the gravitas he brings. Yeah. But he's speaking to a government that really is clinging on to power. They look at defence and across the board, they have very little understanding as a government of politics, of economics, etc. And that comes through in their policies, and particularly in defence. What they don't understand is that not only defending the nation, but actually having a global presence and protecting our allies, particularly in the Gulf, that brings us trade, that brings us gravitas, that brings us investment. Investment produces money. Money pays for welfare and tax. They can't make that connection. How can we help them?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. They don't really get it. And there's this idea that somehow the defence of the realm and defence of our interests is not actually a vital thing. But of course, for many centuries, Britain patrolled the seas. We had that naval presence. That brought with it not just defence of our nations, but our interests, but also economic security as well. Now, we've been relying on America for quite a few decades now to do a lot of that. But, when America came a-calling, whether you agree or disagree with the timing or the aims of the Iraq conflict, America came a-calling. We were lacking at that point. We couldn't even defend our own RAF base in Cyprus. And had to rely on the French to do it, which I think should be a source of national humiliation, in my view. But we can't even patrol our own seas, the channel near us. We allow Russian naval vessels and shadow fleet to just go through the channel, and we don't act because we haven't got the ships to do so. That has an economic impact, as you say, as well as a prestige impact as well. Why do you think that politicians don't get it? Is it because our politicians largely, they're not ex-military? They often, certainly in this case, they come from, the charity sector, social sector. They don't get it?
I think you put your finger, the people who really are at the top, they've never had a proper job. They've come from the school debating society, various trade unions and university debating societies, and they just don't understand modern economics. And they stand, when, for instance, the Red Sea is blocked, and it can be anything from a container in the Suez Canal to rebels and the Strait of Hormuz. Then suddenly they walk into a supermarket and prices have tripled. And they stand with the rest of the public with their finger in their mouth going, oh, what happened there? I could explain it to them very simply. And the thing about what American and also the Israelis are doing versus the war in Iran and whether we should or shouldn't become involved. If you have a meaningful military, you have a vote. The Americans pay attention to what you have to say.
Yeah.
If you do not have a military and you want to send some burly ladies round to give them a good talking to, they just laugh at you. And if you have an army that's focusing, a military that's focusing on diversity and inclusion, whilst the enemy is preparing for war, when it comes to the point, they will kill you. We will lose. And they
it's really that simple.
It is that simple.
And I mean, this is the very scary thing. And we've had all these, these ridiculous stories, which are actually really terrifying about, well, got too many white men who want to fly fighter jets. We need to find some black people and some women and some trans people and whatever. I mean, absolute madness and nonsense and completely.
Well, it's just a waste of time. I mean, the fact is that we've got in the Ministry of Defence, there are more diversity and inclusion groups, 92, than we have working Challenger tanks. Now,
I'm sorry. Can we just let that sink in, everybody? I mean, that is an extraordinary statistic.
And we've certainly got probably, I would say, 3 times as many, or that number would represent 3 times, maybe 4 times the number of available ships that we have.
Yeah.
We had a Russian illegal tanker escorted by a frankly ramshackle Russian destroyer sailed through the channel the other day. The only thing we could put out to show a presence was a Royal Fleet Auxiliary. This is a resupply vehicle. Yeah. It's like chasing the baddies in a bin lorry. The Russians must have been killing themselves with laughter and standing on the decks.
And the key thing you hear is that they'll say, well, that wasn't a threat to us, but they are testing us. And we had on the very same day, we had the Defence Secretary John Healey looking very, very serious, making a statement from Number 10 with the wood panel and the flags behind him about how we see you, he said to Russia, because they'd been monitoring these submarines, which had been monitoring all of our undersea cables.
The Russians are doing 2 things with the undersea cables. They're getting ready to cut them.
Yep.
And they're telling us they're getting ready to cut them.
Yeah.
Now, alongside the Labour government, we have the Republic of Ireland, who spends 0.025 in defence. They rely on the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy to protect their skies and their waters. They will stand beside our government with their finger in their mouth when those cables are cut, because we wouldn't be having this conversation now. There will be no internet. This will be like COVID on speed. This will be isolation. This will be supermarkets closing down, lights going out. This will be traffic lights failing. This will be hospitals closing.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? And the Russians are saying, try us, see what's going to happen, because we know what you're able to do. Nothing.
And this is the thing, and we rely on. It's not just it's not just about us being able to talk on over the internet. This is about money movements. This is about this is the city. This is investments. Also our gas pipelines as well. Our electricity lines to France.
Work at the supermarket. Yeah. We've been in a lot of trouble, but the simple fact of reality is that we need some adults, and we have one in the form of the esteemed Lord Robertson.
Yep.
Able to sit them down and get them to fold their hands and look towards them and explain to them why this is necessary. Yeah. They should pay attention.
But their argument seems to be, and again, it's interesting, the penny pinchers in the Treasury who aren't penny pinching when it comes to, a 19-year-old who claims they're too anxious to work on a Monday morning, then they can have a lifetime on the dole, effectively. But they are penny pinching when it comes to this. The public, a lot of the public is waking up to this. But again, a lot of the public will say that, we want more spent on defence, but they don't want to pay more taxes. But a huge sum of money is being spent on a lot of things which I think a lot of us would consider optional, whereas defence isn't. But trying to persuade this government, trying to persuade Labour backbenchers to vote that through, it's a very different matter.
Well, it's as simple as this. The May local elections are coming up. The government's going to be smashed to pieces. They're panicking at the moment, and they will not ramp back on welfare spending in the hope that their crisis will not be the bloodbath that it's inevitably going to be. So, and there's many other things going to happen between now and May, because a week's a long time in politics. In the world with President Trump and the Iran war, a day's a long. We wake up every morning to find out what's happening next, and so things are going to move pretty quickly. our government are passengers on this bus. There is no driver. It's careering down the road and we don't know where it's going. And the hope is after May, with the wake-up call, somebody's going to volunteer to go and take control of the bus.
I mean, and someone has got to. It's fascinating. Keir Starmer's aides trying to paint him as this sort of elder statesman, this extraordinary world statesman over the Iran conflict by making the right decision when he basically sort of sat on the fence as long as he could. And then the decision was made forward by the fact we didn't actually have anything that could actually help the Americans in this war. But he has set up a new cabinet committee today to deal with the fallout for Iran. It's called the Middle East Response Committee. So we have a new committee. So that'll solve everything, Tim.
Well, it's a bit like the old jokes about the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club, call the committee. It used to be a joke, now it's reality. The fact of the matter is that huge damage has been done to our national standing in the eyes of our allies and elsewhere. In the eyes of NATO, if we want to have a leadership role in NATO, we can't anymore because people have seen through us. Some would say that we've got and it's a fact that we've got the 6th largest defense budget in the world, and we've got a nuclear fleet. But our nuclear fleet is now ramshackle. The Americans are worried about the state of it because what's happening is things are being chipped away at the bottom. When we needed a ship and we reached for one of our 6 Type 45 destroyers, HMS Dragon, they couldn't get it started. Nobody knew where the keys were, and the battery was flat.
Good God.
This is the situation.
Tim Collins. Good Lord. I mean, you're given the opposite of that. I mean, I still remember you from 2003 in Iraq, that inspirational speech you gave to our men there. This is kind of the opposite, but this is the wake-up call that our well,
we also have to remember we allowed by neglect a strike on our base in Cyprus.
Yeah.
That base is essential to our standing in the world. I would argue as much as our nuclear deterrence. In many respects, and the public don't understand, I'm not going to get into the detail, but that base is the special relationship right there. The intelligence that we gather in the Middle East and the influence we're able to garner from there, and we neglected it once again. And so this story is all about neglect. The SDR was written, and it's £28 billion short.
Yeah. And £28 billion short in the next few years in this government. Yeah.
In this government, the Prime Minister he says he has it on his desk.
Yeah.
And he's looking at the defence budget, and he's looking
having a meeting about it.
And there's a committee on the case. When it comes down to it, they're going to have to make a hard choice. And what they'll do is they'll do what the School Debating Society. I think the School Debating Society would make a better choice. They'd take a longer view of things. Yeah. This is what they don't have. They don't have a long view. They just see May the 6th coming down the tracks.
May the 7th, yeah.
May the 7th, and they are terrified. And they're pressing buttons like a lucky monkey in the hope that something will come out. It ain't going to happen. So I think we just have to accept we're in trouble. I hope that after the big wake-up call, the big bucket of cold water that's going to hit them on the 7th of May, they're going to wake up and start behaving like a responsible government.
Well, I mean, good luck with that, hey? Tim Collins, I'm so pleased to get you on. Tim Collins, OBE, retired British Army Colonel, terrifying the living daylights out of us. I think we can agree. Tom Slater, listening to all of that?
No, sobering, but this is the sobering up that needs to take place, I suppose.
How many former military leaders, how many former defence officials, how many need to say this for the government will act?
Exactly, and it's also clear that this is a root and branch problem. Even if more money is going to be spent on defence, we also need to make sure it's going to the right things. Yeah. Military procurement is not great. There's clearly just the whole system needs to change. And also you need to make that case to the public, to be like the days in which we could neglect this area, this fundamental area of the state, are over if they ever really started.
Absolutely not an option. I don't know about you, I feel like I need a stiff drink after listening to all of that. I'm going to get to your calls up next. You're calling in still about Southport. If you want to have your say about what Tim Collins had to say, get in touch as well. 0344 499 1000. Calls up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:49 is time. We're going to get to your calls. Daniel's on the line in Epsom. Hello, Daniel. You want to talk about that Southport report, don't you? What do you want to say?
Well, I just find it really sums up this government and kind of the inner workings of our sort of public sector, how they can care more about the welfare of the person who turns out to commit such a horrific act rather than the lives of the people. I mean, I look at all of these cases, actually, and if you take a step back and you look at all of the cases, it seems to me that they have a lot... What they seem to have mostly in common is most of the victims are native white British people, and most of the attackers are not. They're either first or second generation. We seem to be importing a lot of people into Britain who go on to commit... If you look at the news every day, right, there's a story pretty much every day about a rape or a sexual assault or an attack every day.
Involving a relatively recent arrival of this. Now, look, the vast majority of people who come to this country...
You don't need to qualify that. You don't need to
I know, but I do feel the need to say the vast majority of people who come to this country are, you know, are not committing these sort of crimes. But you are quite right that certainly when it comes to like asylum seekers, the recent arrivals, the spate of attacks we've had, sexual assaults and the like, absolutely. And there are some big question marks about this. Axel Rudikabana was born in this country, you say second generation, but his parents had come from Rwanda, where we've seen horrific atrocities. There are some very big question marks about his father, Alfonso's past, and what basis he was able to come to this country, what role he did or did not play. I do not know, but there's a lot of mystery surrounding this, and this is something I think a lot of people want to know about the people we are allowing into our country. Salman Abedi's father, as Tom Slater pointed out earlier, the Manchester Arena attacker. Why are these people in our country? Why are their families in our country?
See, the public, the wider public, the British majority out there, they're not blind, right? They can see patterns and they can see things happening in front of them.
Exactly.
And for the government, this government in particular, and the last, will not protect our borders. It will not protect our people. I'll tell you a story, right? I moved out to Epsom because I didn't want to have my family in London. I didn't find it safe anymore, and I didn't want to live there, okay? And I don't know, did you see the incident that happened? There was a rape by several men over the weekend.
Outside a church by a girl leaving a nightclub, yes.
Now, we don't know much about it yet, so I'm not going to talk about it, but she was... In this part of the world, it's been a deep, deep shock. People are deeply shocked here because this type of thing doesn't really happen here. Yeah. And you know, we're in deep shock. I'm now looking at this crime, and they didn't put... They didn't write any details about.
No, but the extraordinary thing was, and again, we didn't cover it on the show yesterday because of various other things going on, you know. But the police basically put out a call saying anyone in the area, if anyone has any information about this, basically a gang rape of this woman leaving a nightclub outside a church, but then declined to give any description of the men whatsoever, even though the woman had, you know, obviously given some information. I mean, you've got to ask, like, how can you ask people to give information about these men if you're not going to describe them as white or black or Middle Eastern appearance, whether they're fat, short, old, young, any information that hopefully the victim would be able to provide? What was the point of the police doing that, and what are they hiding?
Yeah, what are they hiding? And people like me, I've got a daughter and two sons. I'm frightened. I'm scared. I moved here to get away from it, so I didn't have to run the risk of, you know, all getting attacked and sexually like you do in London. I didn't want to live there anymore, and I moved here to give them a chance. And now that chance is being taken. You're not safe anywhere now. And the public have had enough. And I tell you what, I'm going to vote reform. I've been out leafleting for them. This has got to stop. We have to do something. We can't just continue the decline and degradation in Britain. We can't do it anymore.
I agree. And I agree with your anger and your frustration and frankly, bewilderment at the refusal by the authorities to act. Daniel, thank you very much indeed. Some of your messages coming in. Parker says, Axel Rudikabana had been referred to prevent 3 times. He'd been expelled from school for carrying a knife. He had an Al-Qaeda training manual. How could the authorities fail to take action? They should be in the dock for criminal negligence. Those 3 little girls would still be alive had they done their job properly. properly. John says it's not just the parents and the others' moral duty. The police and the social services are paid by us to do their duty. The obligation is contractual. It's in the job description. Sam says the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Exactly. Axel Rudikabana says Mark should face the death penalty and his parents should face criminal prosecution. When will we get a government that keeps Britain safe? Rose says all this shouting about the parents takes responsibility away from the government. No, but the parents is not. We've had cases before where parents have been pleading with the authorities to act and the authorities haven't acted. The police were shielding their very, very dangerous killer son. For goodness sake. Oh, by the way, just some breaking news. A killer has been jailed for life for punching a woman to death. Just broke on the news. We'll get more details on that. I mean, doesn't stop, does it? We're going to take a very quick break. We're going to come back to another call. Robert is on the line from Hertfordshire. We'll get to him up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 11:57 is the time. Let's go to another call. Robert is in Hertfordshire. And Robert, you want to talk about Southport as well, don't you?
I do. I won't mention his name, but I'm in my 70s now, and I'm of the opinion that your children are a reflection of the parents. And 100%. They always have been. Up to a certain age, you know, my kids, well, actually it's my daughter's 48th birthday today, but when my son used to go out to friends and to be looked after, they used to say, oh, they're really, really well behaved. They wasn't. They were little sods indoors, you know.
But they knew how to do it, yeah, absolutely. They're totally reflective. And also, parents want to take glory. Oh, they've got some great A-levels or they've done something nice. We want to take the credit. Well, then we have to take the blame when things go wrong.
Well, I think the thing is as well, as I say, I'm in my 70s. I came, when I was in a secondary school, they had they had punishment. You could get the cane, you could get the detention, you could get the cane, and that was wrong. Your parents could give you a clip round the ear roll, and that's fair enough. They took it away because there was some brutal teachers in those days, but there was a fear there, you know.
Yeah.
They never brought anything in to replace that. The only thing you can do now to punish kids is take their mobile phone off them. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You know,
but I hear 7 or 8 year olds talking to their parents, talking to adults in a way that, frankly, I mean, I don't know if I'd be alive if I'd spoken to my parents like that at that age. And I've said to parents, seriously, you know, what you're putting up with now, you wait till they're 16 and see if you've got any control. I think a lot of people simply aren't doing their parenting. But I mean, I think we're talking about a kid being rude or, you know, truanting from school, as opposed to, you know, a kid who's got an Al-Qaeda manual, some rice in, and a machete in their home. I mean, absolutely, you know. Parents really absolutely need to, you know, install discipline, and they need to take responsibility. I definitely want these parents prosecuted 100% of Axel Rudikabana. Love to hear your thoughts as well. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Up next, we'll be talking more about what on earth is going on in the Strait of Hormuz. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Welcome back if you've been listening. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots to talk about. If you have missed anything, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about that report into the Southport attack. Found it was a clearly signposted disaster waiting to happen. Abject failure, moral duty failed by Axel Rudikabana's parents, the police, social services, mental health services, Prevent, you name it. Everybody failed. Those 3 little girls who were stabbed to death, the 8 little girls who were also stabbed, and many others who were traumatised by that event. Also going to be talking about Lord Robertson, the former government Labour minister, the man who wrote the Keir Starmer Strategic Defence Review last year, former NATO chief, for goodness sake. I mean, he's got some credentials. You might think he's worth listening to. Well, he's doing a speech today. One of Britain's leaders have shown a corrosive complacency toward defence, says our security right now is in peril. We're also going to be talking about the anniversary this Thursday of that Supreme Court ruling, April last year, on single-sex basis, basically saying Yeah. We're going to define women by that old-fashioned way of defining them by their biological sex. So why on earth are so many different organisations, both in the public and private sector, still refusing to obey the law? Well, we'll be talking about that. Oh, yeah, and why is Bridget Phillipson, the Women's Minister, as well as the Education Secretary, why is she only just, after being named and shamed, agreeing to meet the campaigners who actually got that law changed? Delighted to say that joining me throughout the show today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Afternoon. Once again to you. We're going to be talking to Lord Wolney, a former government advisor, in just a couple of moments. I just want to bring you we were just talking about, crimes in this country and dangerous people walking around. And as we were talking, a news flash popped up on the screens we got in the studio. And a jury at the Old Bailey back in March found Dwayne Owosu of Dagenham guilty of killing 27-year-old Zawa Mukhtar after 12 hours deliberation. Basically, various people get into this guy's car, they all meet on a night out. The fight has started. The guy who's driving basically throws this woman out of the car and then kicks and punches her, and she dies. I mean, apparently his defence to the jury was that he was trying to de-escalate the situation. I'm not entirely sure that is the case. But Dwayne Owosu was 36 years old. He'd never met this woman before this evening, back in August last year. His nickname, by the way, is Nasty. There's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? He left her to die on the street. He's just been sentenced to 16 and a half years behind bars, even though the judge, extraordinarily, he does accept that there was no intention of killing her. But apart from that, he was punching her and kicking her in the neck. I'm sorry, a night out, a bunch of people get in a car, there's a bit of an altercation in the car, and then a man and this woman, apparently by all accounts, she threatened to stab somebody. Who knows what the hell is going on? I have not had nights out like this. I don't know about you, Tom. Maybe I'm just not living the wild existence a lot of people are. But then a man gets out and basically kicks and punches her in the street and she dies. And now he's going to serve 6.5 years behind bars. Not quite sure why 6.5 years is deemed to be enough, but there we are. Again, don't want this person on the street ever. Won't serve 16.5. He'll serve half that, if that. These cases keep on coming.
No, it's a steady drumbeat of them now, isn't it? And it's one of those things which makes people feel really, really unsafe. The mayor can point and say until he is blue in the face that violent crime is coming down and it is on net. But at the same time, the proliferation of cases like this is really alarming. And also the fact that even when someone is apprehended, prosecuted, convicted, they seem to just get a slap on the wrist. I mean, when people find out about cases actually making it through the criminal justice system effectively, which is a rare enough thing these days, given how bad the backlog is, you would expect then when it comes to manslaughter, murder, sexual violence and so on, that the book would be thrown at them, and yet increasingly it isn't. No. And people are baffled by all of this. So it doesn't matter how kind of big or small the problem is in relation to a particular form of crime, it needs to be punished effectively. And if that's missing, then people are going to fear that you're not properly cracking down.
I'm just terrified there are people just sort of wandering around our society who think that that's a normal, reasonable thing to do. But there we are. Right, look, let's go back to the Southport attack back in July 2024. And of course, we all know the horrific events of that day, the Axel Rudakabana stabbing 3 little girls to death, BB King, age 6, Elsie Dot Stancombe, age 7, Alice De Silva Aguirre, age 9. And we must never forget their names, but also the 8 other little girls whose names we don't know, who also got stabbed, had life-changing injuries, and the 2 adults who were also there trying to protect them. But also the many other girls who were there, who are going to have to live with those horrors. Alex Rudakabana is serving 50-odd years behind bars. His parents, though, not been charged with a crime. Indeed, they've been basically taxpayers' money is being funded to fund them to move to a safe house. Alfonso Rudakabana and Letitia, his wife, have been accused of failing in their moral duty, said the author of the first phase inquiry report, Sir Adrian Fulford, yesterday, in failing to basically report that their son was a danger. Now, he'd already been seen by Prevent a couple of times, Prevent strategy. He'd been expelled from school for taking knives in on 10 different occasions and beating another pupil with a hockey stick. He deliberately went into school to do that, caught with a knife on a bus. He'd been referred to mental health units, to social workers, you name it, again and again and again. And fundamentally, every single individual in every single agency in every school failed him and failed those 3 little girls and all the other girls who were attacked, and failed all those of us who are still terrified about our kids not being safe anywhere they are. Autism was used as an excuse. A head teacher of one of those schools he was referred to was basically told, oh, you're basically, you're basically stereotyping by race a black boy with a knife. But meanwhile, his parents knew he had ricin, a deadly toxin. They knew he had an Al-Qaeda manual. They knew he'd had 10 knives. They'd opened the case, the packaging for a machete themselves. They knew what he was. They knew what he wanted to do. They knew his obsession with violence, and they protected him, and they did not act. They did not report him, and that is why those little girls are dead. So what should happen now? Well, let's talk about this with Lord Wolney. He's a former Labour MP. He's also a former government advisor on political violence, disruption and extremism, and joins us now. Lord Wolney, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon.
I mean, this report is absolutely, horrific. The crime itself, the sentencing remarks from the judge last week when we found out a lot of the detail, which many of us had been spared before, was horrific as well. We're going to be told, aren't we, that lessons are going to be learned, and and this must never happen again, and everyone's going to wring their hands. What should happen?
There does need to be a fundamental overhaul of the system, both in terms of policy, where I think it is right, and a gap has been identified with certain individuals who seem to flit from one ideology to another, or just kind of really consumed by hate, or not being properly processed. But as you say, there is a wider problem here, because it doesn't actually need this vile individual to be put in a particular ideological basket to see that he was a clear danger to everybody around him. Yeah. And yes, in your last comment there, Julia, I think you put your finger on a huge problem that affects so much of public life, in that we are generally really good, we're relatively good at diagnosing and analysing problems. We are not good at being able to actually follow through and drive change through.
But we've had report after report into many different things. I mean, exactly. every single NHS travesty or Grenfell Tower, whatever it is, and you get these reports. They tell you what needs to change, and the government goes yes, yes, yes. And then nothing changes. Why, though? I mean, look, you've been an MP, you're in the House of Lords, you've worked closely with people who are in a position to make this happen. I mean, this is the thing I think a lot of us, especially parents and girls, feel, why wouldn't you, if you were in a position to change things, to keep people safe, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, exactly, and I've wrestled with this question a lot recently over maternity unit scandals in the NHS. I had an example as the former MP for Barrow of horrendous failings with newborn babies dying, with mums dying. A big report was commissioned, published, conclusions, with the findings which are going to be almost identical, I think, to the very important work that Baroness Amos is doing. Now, what is happening here? It is not through, I think, lack of compassion. I think there is genuinely, everyone in those leadership positions always means it when they say never again, and they want to drive change. I think we are just chronically lacking as a country, as a civil service, as a public sector, at being able to properly drive genuine change through systems. And you have these systems that are set in their ways. They don't have great leadership. Complex cases like this by necessity go over lots of different overlapping agencies, and things can get missed. But there's very rarely the quality of leadership and sustained leadership from the front to properly drive through culture change.
Is it also about ownership and about accountability? The reason why they can't drive through change is the same reason why they don't do anything, which is that no one wants to kind of make a decision. We have this across the civil service. Frankly, we have this in big, private corporations as well. Like, no one make a decision. No one's going to get the sack. for not making a decision, but you might get the sack if you make the wrong decision. You might get, told you've lost the company money, or you've made a decision that's led to someone who, who's been locked up, who wouldn't otherwise have been locked up if you're working in social services. You've taken a kid away from parents you think might be beating the child, but or not. If you don't make a decision, you can't be blamed. Your hands were tired. You didn't have any personal, individual sort of power to do anything. And this is where we get to the issue where when you have you have different agencies, you have multi-agencies, you've got committees of people deciding things, and no one basically is the person who says, it is my decision on whether or not this kid is referred to prevent. It's my decision on whether or not this kid is basically locked up in a mental unit, or my decision. There's no one person who is responsible and held responsible afterwards for that decision. We need accountability.
Yeah, you do need accountability, and you're absolutely right that often that safety first default can be a real break on the sort of creative thinking and change which is needed. Now, in a case like this, safety first ought to be having locked this man up.
Yeah.
And I think it should not be beyond the wit of human beings to say that actually to change the default, so that if you have someone who just screams out being a danger, that actually the thing that you need to do to do right by the country, but also to be safer in your job, is to take that safety first approach and say, no, he should be referred, or he should have
that's the key thing. And again, he was referred to prevent twice, and it's interesting. You advise on political violence, disruption, and extremism, and we've seen again and again people being referred to prevent, and we've seen people who've actually gone through being looked at by MI5, for goodness sake, and then it's been decided by the authorities they're probably a risk, but they're not such a big risk. We can't follow them 24/7. We'll take them off. Well, they're on the list, but they're in the background, and then we see attack. And we again and again and again, when we look at it afterwards in the case afterwards, this is somebody who was, the son of an Al Qaeda sympathizer who Samuel Abedi's case in Manchester Arena, and then he and his brother would go over and train with these terrorists in Libya. Oh, you're someone who's fled Libya, but apparently you're able to go back there all the time, and we don't raise red flags and say maybe this person is a risk to us. This keeps happening again and again. In the case of Axel Rudikabana, I mean, how many times does a kid have to be caught with a knife in school before people go, maybe this kid is a threat to people? No one searched his home. No joined up thinking. Again and again, the autism was like, well, he's autistic. I don't give a toss what label they want to give him. If he's a threat, he's a threat. But there was this idea that even when we were not told about the Al Qaeda manual, we were not told about the ricin for many months after he was arrested, and many months after they found those items in his home. And by the way, his parents knew. From this report, we knew they had those items in his home before the attack. The idea was, well, we're not sure whether he's, an Islamist extremist, or whether he's just obsessed with, white genocide. We're not really sure which he's into, so we can't put him through this prevent strategy because he falls kind of between two or three different things. I mean, when you say that out loud, and when lay people like us hear that, we know how crazy that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one thing that definitely can and hopefully will be fixed. People getting confused to say, well, you can't put them in a particular basket and therefore let's just leave it. But also, and you've seen actually the Home Office has announced a new Prevent Commissioner today. I think he's from the Metropolitan Police. It's really important that he does a good job in.
If he's ever worn a rainbow lanyard, I don't trust him. I'm going to say that. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, police officer, old school police officers, the police officers we have on our show, absolutely. The ones who are senior figures right now, they're as signed up to the madness as everyone else in our public sector.
It is crucial that the Prevent Commissioner, that the ministers above them understand the vulnerabilities in Prevent and clear, and I think you've looked at the pattern in recent years where there has been, I think, a reticence to put people into the system for potential Islamist extremism, for example, for fear of being prejudiced. And actually what has happened is therefore probably a comparative over-reporting of right-wing extremism because there's a whole tranche of people who haven't been put through because of Islamist extremism. And then that sees people looking at the figures and say, oh, no, you say that Islamist extremism is a problem, but actually the prevent figures show that it's right-wing extremism is a problem. Now, you've got to, I think, get to grips with that nervousness across the system.
How many, the vast majority of people who've died in terror attacks and who've committed terror attacks in this country in the last 20 years have been Islamist extremism. It's like the 90% mark. No one should be nervous about it. If you're nervous about that, you've got no sodding business working in that field. This is the concern. What do you make of it? There's a head teacher of the basic pupil referral unit for the dangerous kids, and she basically said she feared the Southport killer was a risk, but she was accused. She called him sinister. He had a sinister demeanour, and we've seen some of the images of him, like in the minicab before he went to kill. Yeah, he does look sinister. And she said she was accused of racially stereotyping a black boy with a knife. But he was a boy with a knife. It didn't matter that he was black and white. No, we've seen this again and again. The Nottingham killer, Valder Calacane, he was able to kill 3 and almost kill another 3 people with his vehicle because he was a black man. He was a schizophrenic, and the authorities said basically we're locking up too many black men. We've got, as I say, the Manchester Arena attacker. The security guard didn't tackle a man of Middle Eastern appearance with a rucksack at this concert for Ariana Grande. Loads of girls were attending because he didn't want to be accused of racism. Grooming gangs, tens of thousands of young girls left to be gang raped because no one wanted to say anything because community cohesion. This issue of woke concerns about I don't want to be accused of racism or bigotry myself, so therefore we must not take action. This is becoming something of a recurring theme.
Yeah, undoubtedly, racism and prejudice can and does exist within public life and our public services, but the balance is not set right at the moment. When people on the front line doing their job are basically ducking decisions for fear of being labelled, and it is like almost the worst thing that you can be labelled in public life, and certainly in that parts of liberal civil society within public services, being labelled as a racist can be genuinely career-ending. And so I think undoubtedly the way that the culture is set at the moment does have the potential for a chilling effect, and that can have incredibly serious consequences in terms of public safety, as may well have been played out over this case. And it requires leadership not simply from the right, but also from the centre and the left to say that, no, this is not actually what we came into public life for. If this is the result of people's well-meaning intentions, then this is becoming twisted and wrong, and we have to take the lead in changing it, because that's our values.
It shouldn't even be consideration. It's like the sort of like, if more young black boys are getting locked up for being dangerous extremists, well, then so be it. More men are locked up than women. Well, that's the reason, because they're committing more crime than women. That's why. And if there are certain crimes which have a greater prevalence among certain different, I would say, heritage groups, religious groups, others, there just are. I mean, it's to ignore that is ridiculous, and to argue, well, let's not put him away because he's black, but if he was white, we would have. I mean, I can't think of anything more racist than that. What do you make of the call for the parents to be, parents to be charged with a crime, and also, of course, those who made a lot of the decisions in failing to actually get Axel Rugabana behind bars, so he wasn't able to kill those children? Because the lawyer for the families has been very, very clear, and he said that he believes that they want basically people prosecuted. Chris Walker says he's the lawyer for the families of the 3 girls who died, and he's calling for those people to be named. He wants them to be charged. and he says we know the names and we will publicly name them ourselves. A detective, an ex-former detective, has pointed out that Section 38B of the Terrorism Act 2000 makes it a criminal offence to stay silent when you know someone is planning terrorism. It is a maximum sentence of 10 years. Axel Rudikabana's parents knew he had rice in an Al-Qaeda manu, a load of weapons. He hadn't left the house for 2 years. The last time he'd left the house, he was planning to kill somebody with a knife. He left the house. There was an empty box from a knife as he left the house. There's no doubt at all that they had a reasonable grounds for suspicion that he was going to commit a horrible, horrific criminal or terrorist act. They should be charged with a crime, shouldn't they?
I can absolutely understand why why those who are anyway connected to this want to see proper accountability, and that there is a potential for criminal negligence. I think one of my experience on this, as I say, has been in maternity unit scandals and neonatal deaths, and actually, I saw some merit at the time it was Jeremy Hunt, who was the health secretary, Conservative health secretary, who was trying to change the culture where you genuinely looked and had accountability for mistakes. Now, part of that was sometimes saying that we shouldn't go straight to prosecution, because what can happen is that it cannot be absolutely appropriate, but it instills an even greater sense of fear and people being afraid to actually come forward and admit mistakes. However, the issue that we've got at the moment is that mistakes are not being admitted and there is no accountability.
Yeah,
so
we've got the worst of both
needs to be
worlds.
changed. Yeah,
Can I ask you just finally, Lord, look, having been a former government advisor on this issue, we're told again and again when it comes to like terrorism, I believe what Axel Rudikabana did was a terrorist act. That there were something like 30,000 people on the watch list, but they can only really, plus probably more than that. They can only really sort of, keep close tabs on about 3,000. This man didn't even make it onto a watch list. Or boy as he was, 17-year-old as he was when he committed this crime. From the experts you've spoken to, how many people out there are there like this who could be just sitting there in their bedrooms right now, who could be a danger to us? I mean, are we thinking 2 or 3? Are we thinking a few hundred, a few thousand? Because I don't know how many parents feel they can live like this, worried about their safety of their children.
Well, you have to think and hope that Asylum Rudikabana was exceptionally evil and violent, and there are not hordes of people like that out. But we have known for many, many years that people can be radicalized towards violence very quickly. And it is very difficult for the intelligence services, for the police services to keep track of that. And I am uncomfortable where often the debate immediately goes to, well, this person was on a list at some point, and therefore they should have been solved, because there is the MI5 cannot be everywhere. It wouldn't be actually appropriate, and there's a limit to the resources. However, we've got to do better. I'm excited by the capability of AI in this field to be able to be that kind of eye that can scan so much more than the human eye can, so that when you are getting people on a path of radicalization very fast, at that point they can ring alarm bells. That requires one, investment in capability, but two, us thinking sometimes about privacy in a different
surveillance
way.
That's the word. I just worry it's going to be surveillance of ordinary law-abiding citizens, and we're going to still let these people slip through the net. Lord Morley, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much indeed, former government advisor on political violence, disruption and extremism. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, your thoughts?
Well, it's just a reminder, isn't it, that the system is failing on all conceivable fronts. There's been a lot of discussion about how Prevent failed to capture and deal with someone like Rudikabana. Interesting, if you looked at the referrals, the percentage of the people who are referred with no kind of fixed ideology is now the kind of lion's share. So clearly, it's in a sense, it's being overburdened with people who don't fit into it. But at the same time, what do you then do with that? You then look at the Prevent, how it's dealing with people who are committed extremists of a right-wing or Islamist flavour. Year after year after year, the number of referrals for far-right extremism, as Lord Warney was alluding to there, exceed those who are referred for Islamist extremism, despite being 95% of the terror-related deaths since 1999, three-quarters even of MI5's terror caseload. So the problem is that you can shuffle around the schemes, you can train up people, you can resource it. But if there is a culture within schooling, within local authorities, and ultimately within these
can't blame the Islamists for everything,
which are charged with keeping us safe from extremism, and yet are nervous about talking about the primary extremism threat we face, that's not fit for purpose either. So again, top to bottom, we're seeing a state that is failing us out of a combination of just plain old bureaucratic ineptitude and being in the grip of all of these malevolent ideologies and forms of political correctness, which have led needless blood to be spilled.
I've got an idea. Why don't we go off the people who want to kill us and blow us up? I know. I'm not an expert, Tom, but I'm thinking that might keep us safer.
You might be on something there.
I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out there. 12:28 is the time. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch to have your say. Got some messages to read. Get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He's failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot. He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door, and away we go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:31 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Thomas is in Colwyn Bay. Thomas, what do you want to say?
Hello.
Hello.
We're living through the B-movie version of Demolition Man. Have you seen that film?
I haven't. No, tell me.
So we have a nanny state which is physically incapable of tackling a violent offender, very similar to the future that Wesley Snipes is transported into. We also have a barbarian from the past who is going around like committing crimes and violent offences, and we just can't deal with it. Every single phase of the government, the police, the social services, you know, nobody's actually taking any accountability in dealing with it. They're happy to police speech, just like in the film.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to actually dealing with someone who is violent and intends to do us harm, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the bit, isn't it? Whenever we say we need more detectives, again, the first response to a lot of this inquiry was about basically blunting the ends of knives that they sell us for our kitchens. I mean,
it's ludicrous.
Absolutely insane.
It doesn't make any sense. And do they really think that that's going to make any difference. I mean, the cars.
Do they care?
The barriers.
Do they care?
They must care, surely.
I like to think they do.
Do something about it.
But I kind of judge people on their actions. And I always think, it's like, well, if you did care, you'd do something about it. If you're in a position to do something about it and you don't do something about it, I'm going to assume you don't care.
You've got a moral duty to do it, and it doesn't seem to be happening.
And if you don't want to do your duty, move over and let someone else do it. Yeah, I have to say, I found my conversation with Lord Walney quite depressing on that front. I really did. Thomas, thank you very much indeed. Vernon's in Staffordshire. Hi, Vernon.
Julia, good morning to you.
Late night for Vernon. Good afternoon, Vernon.
Oh, sorry, 12:33. Forgive me. Put me in prison. Julia, when you implement the law based upon people's colour or religion, you've got no chance.
Yep.
Had a white person had a knife, he would be in prison. That poor teacher, effectively, who raised concerns because he looked sinister, because the lad was black, he didn't go to prison. That's just it. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not. That is the most racist thing ever.
Isn't it? This is the extraordinary thing. But also a senior teacher in that sort of pupil referral unit, if she's going, I mean, the sort of wrong-uns that she's seeing, the damaged kids, the terrifying kids that she's seeing, if she's raising concerns going, this kid is sinister, I mean, let's listen to her, yeah?
Yeah. You've got selective conversations, Julia.
Yep.
You're one of the few, and Peter, obviously, as well on Talk. You can talk about uncomfortable things. I mean, I think the country's, I know you're very hopeful. I love this country, but it's gone to the dogs. I don't see us coming back from this.
Oh, I don't know. We can't because we've got kids and we cannot leave our kids to a worse country than the one we came into. That's why I feel so strongly about it. But you know what? We do need a root and branch clear out of our political class, of our civil service, of pretty much every authority that's supposed to be doing something. I mean, again, public, personal accountability. People need to be accountable for what they do in their jobs and in their lives and in that as parents and as everybody. And that is the route to, personal responsibility, accountability, moral duty, civic duty. These things should mean something.
Apply the law, Julia.
That's
what we have to do. Apply the law. It's really simple. All you need to do, this is England, this is Wales, Scotland, Ireland. The law of the land is this.
Yeah.
I couldn't care what creed, colour, religion you are. If you break the law, no discussion, you go to prison. And if we need to build more prisons, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's always been my view. You can charge me more taxes for that. Vernon, thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. Before we go to a quick break, we're going to be talking to a defence expert about the war in Iran. Where are we in terms of the Strait of Hormuz and what's happening there? And how useful is Keir Starmer's new committee on dealing with that going to be? Let's try and cheer things up with something fun. Summer is on the way. It's been looking rather nice out there today. There's no better way of spending a sunny afternoon than at Wimbledon. And we're giving you the chance to be there. We've got 2 tickets on Centre Court on Monday the 6th of July. You could be there, right there at the heart of the action with official Wimbledon debenture seats and enjoy exclusive access to the debenture lounge all day long too. I've done that. It is absolutely brilliant. This is so well worth your day. Even if you're not that into tennis, trust me, this is a great day out. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK.
Not again. We did this yesterday where we read out all the details of this competition and then it doesn't work. I'm so sorry. Hopefully it will work in the next and you can get all the details. I'm sure they're online somewhere anyway as well. Right now we'll take a quick break. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Coming up, we are going to be talking to Sex Matters Maya Forstater about why we are on Thursday, a year on from that Supreme Court ruling about what a woman is. You and I already knew what a woman was, but why are so many public and private bodies still not actually obeying the law? We'll talk about that. First up, let's talk about what on earth is going on in the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz. David Petri Karakos is a special correspondent at the Daily Mail and joins us now. Apologies for you're getting your name wrong there, but very good afternoon to you, David.
Afternoon to you, Julia. Don't worry, I'm used to it.
No, I'm to apologise. Hey, you it's worse being called Hartley-Brewer, trust me. Let's talk about where we are in terms of our defence. First of all, the accusation by Lord Robertson, a former Labour minister under Blair, former Defence Minister, former NATO chief, also of this government strategic defence review only last year, accusing the government basically of corrosive complacency, and previous governments too, towards defence, saying that non-military experts in the Treasury are basically guilty of vandalism when it comes to our defence, and saying our security is in peril. What do you make of those claims?
Well, I can only agree, depressingly agree, Julia. I mean, I spend a lot of my time in various war zones. In eastern Ukraine, for example, I see the huge strides that are being made with drones and other forms of warfare, and we are sadly behind the curve. But you know what's as depressing, almost as depressing as how underarmed and underfunded we are? Hearing politicians go on and on about how underfunded and unarmed we are and how they're going to make a difference, and it never does.
No, indeed. And again, even the commitment to raise the percentage of GDP being spent, we know a lot of that was going to go on the Cheko still. Well, maybe that money's available now. It's not actually some of it's on sort of international development aspects. It's not actually going to be going on ordering the ships and recruiting the men that we actually are going to need, building the ammunitions factories and the like. You know, we've seen what Ukraine had to do. You know, we've seen what Poland has been doing. Finland has been doing. Germany have got their act together under Merz. I mean, he has been a breath of fresh air and common sense in Europe after many years of complacency there. Our lot don't seem to wake up. I don't think I'd go more than 2 or 3 days on this show without someone who knows their stuff, a former defence secretary, a former head of the army, MI6, you name it, coming on this show and saying, we are under attack, we are in peril, we need to act, and we need to act, yesterday, not in 4 years' time. 28 billion quid is what the Strategic Defence Review said that needs to be spent now, straight away, in the next few years by the MOD. No, we had no response from the government since last autumn.
You're absolutely right. And I want to make this point, and I've written this, that we are at war, Julia, and we have been at war probably for about 2 decades. But we're still stuck in that paradigm of war looks like World War II. Yeah. Armies in uniform, marching across a battlefield that's as clear as a boxing ring. It's not. People think war's like being pregnant. You either are or you aren't. But it's not. We are under informational attack. We are under people weaponize corruption against us. They weaponize migration flows. In the 21st century, war is fought on many different planes, and we are woefully unprepared. And I worry that it's psychological. Look, I know we don't have much money at the moment. Obviously, we've declined since the golden age of the Victorian era, but I look at a country like Turkey, okay? I look at Erdogan, who I despise, but this is a man that has a vision, okay? And he does a lot of stuff, generally for ill. And look, Britain, we may be in a bad place at the moment, but we've got more capabilities than Turkey, okay? Let's be realistic here now. And this is what worries me, Julia, because decline is in many ways a psychological state, and that's what I fear the most. And we need to get out of it. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We need small C reform, and we need it at the fundamental root and branches. You said, look, what we need now is, and I'm going to stress this, Julia, in impulse, not in doctrine, is Maoism. I'm not saying we want a cultural revolution, but we need to understand that it doesn't really matter if it's Labour or Tories anymore, unless we tackle the civil service, unless we tackle procurement, unless we tackle out-of-control migration and things like that. We are in serious trouble, and the world is getting a very, very, very bad and dangerous place.
And it's been a very dangerous place. In 2001 should have been the wake-up call. I was saying earlier, 2014, the invasion of Crimea should have been the next massive big, red neon sign. And as you say, a lot of people have this idea, well, not going to roll tanks in. Russia isn't going to be invading Dover. But that, as you say, that's not how it's working. Why is Russia spending all this time with their submarines, basically mapping where all of our undersea cables are for not just electronic communications, but cyber transfer of funds, our electricity cables, our gas pipelines? Why on earth would they be doing that and testing us, testing our cybersecurity, whether it's the NHS or the Ministry of Defence or just our shops? Cyber attacks on banks. Whenever I hear about a big cyber attack on a bank, I'm always like, yeah, sure, it was just some teenagers. Sure, it was. When we see the bots interfering with elections, when you see, as you say, the pushing of mass migration and the encouragement of that, the misinformation we see online, the distortion of views on countries like Ukraine, like Israel, they're doing it for a reason, and they're doing it to undermine us, and we are falling for it, hook, line and sinker. And it doesn't matter how many experts say this shouldn't be allowed to be happening, people should act. It's become like a party political issue. But surely defence of the realm should never be a party political issue. It should be something that every party is signed up to.
Absolutely. In the end, when you strip away all of the rhetoric, the government, whatever government it is, Tory, Labour, whoever, its first and primary job is to defend the realm. That's it. Everything else stems from that. And you're right. When Russia does this, they are mapping their adversary. They're mapping their enemy. And, don't forget, China right now, Russia right now, they're looking at what's happening in Iran because America is using a lot of its best weaponry. Israel is doing the same. Let's understand that Ukraine and Israel are garrison states for the West on the front lines of what is a broader war against a group of adversaries that aren't really linked by very much. China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, but a desire to punch holes in the Pax Americana, the West, whatever you want to call it, wherever they can. And they're very, very serious and they're very, very committed, and we are not.
And they are doing it very, very well because we are falling apart. Now, look, I hold Trump responsible for an awful lot of that, but he was right. The Western European leaders in NATO frankly have not been pulling their weight. Where do you think we are in terms of the Iran conflict? Because absurdly we've got our Prime Minister sort of thinking he's a player in this. We had that ridiculous 3-day tour of the Middle East after the announcement of that 2-week ceasefire. Today he set up the Middle East Middle East Response Committee. So obviously that's going to be, dealing with the economic response. They're actually not doing anything. There's yet another talking shop. They're not actually doing anything about our security, our energy supply security, our food supplies, fertilizer, all that. I mean, it's genuinely a national humiliation what's been going on. But in terms of the Strait of Hormuz and this standoff between Americans and, well, certainly Donald Trump and the Iranian regime, where do you think that's going and how damaging is it going to be?
Well, look, Trump has escalated, okay? They announced a de facto blockaded or closed the straits. He's announced a blockade of their blockade. Now, in one sense, I can understand it, in the sense that he thought, we will not be held hostage by the regime, but it's a high-risk move by a man who has spent an entire lifetime and career taking gambles. Yeah. So I've always said, look, the thing about the Straits of Hormuz, it is one of the few points of leverage Iran has, but it's also possibly its biggest vulnerability. It's the artery with which it gets its oil out to the world. With all of its other economies basically destroyed by its own incompetence, it needs its oil. But look, it's high risk. China has just come out and said that this blockade is dangerous and irresponsible, or words to that effect.
I don't care what China thinks about anything.
I agree 100%. It's nice to see someone annoying them, but these are the stakes. Yeah. So I think Trump calculates that the Iranians will blink first because, they are in deep trouble. As I said, say what you like about the war, there is a fundamental truth here in that we have what I call the despot's dividend. Okay, on the one hand, we have an Iranian regime that's cut all the internet inside Iran. All we hear on their side are crowing and boasting leaders. On the other side, the entire world in free societies is having a go at Trump and Netanyahu and everything else, and it enables the Iranians. Yeah. They see it and they exploit it. They exploit our wedge issues. Now, I'm glad that there is this divide. We certainly don't want to cut the internet in the West. But inside that country, we're hearing estimates probably of $200 billion worth of damage to infrastructure. And it's infrastructure the Iranians care about. It's not people's homes. Yeah. It's IRG facilities, it's ballistic missile silos, all this sort of stuff. The Iranians cannot be but bleeding really badly. Now, they can take a lot of pain, fine, but it's not interminable, it's not inevitable, it's not endless. Okay. So that's the play he's made.
Well, we shall wait and see, eh? Meanwhile, getting into battles with the Pope as well. But there we are. Look, so much to talk about. I could talk to you for an hour. David, thank you so much. David Petri-Karakos, thank you so much, special correspondent at the Daily Mail. Up next, going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to the Chief Executive of Sex Matters, Maya Forstater. We are almost just 2 days away from the anniversary of that Supreme Court ruling on, well, what you and I knew already, what a woman was. So why are people not obeying the law, including, oh, by the way, the actual women's minister in this government? This is Talk.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He's failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door, and away we go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. Right, big anniversary coming up on Thursday. It's the anniversary of the Supreme Court telling us what we all already knew, which was what a woman was and what a man was, defining it by biological sex and establishing that, no, the law had never actually changed. The law had always been the law, which meant that a single-sex space, any sort of service or any provision that was only meant for women was only for women as defined by biological sex and not what a man thought or what he put on a Wednesday afternoon. So why is the law still not being obeyed almost 365 days on? Well, let's talk to Maya Forstater, Chief Executive of Sex Matters, about that. Good afternoon to you, Maya.
Hello, Julia.
It is mind-blowing that we needed this court ruling, basically brought about by a case in Scotland by 4 women in Scotland, wonderful heroes of both of ours, I know, and you were there at the time. It's astonishing we needed it in the first place, but it's also astonishing that a year on, so many organisations, both private and in the public sector, by the way, including this government and Parliament, still are not obeying the law as was clearly set out in a judgment that, frankly, an 8-year-old could understand.
Yes, well, Parliament, in fact, is in its own toilets and change rooms. It has brought itself into line with the law, but government departments haven't. And the Minister for Women and Equalities has just said we're going to have to wait till after the local elections for them to publish the guidance.
But we've been waiting since last April. The Equality and Human Rights Commission issued a document, was it last September? We were still waiting for that to be published. And there's been a lot of criticism. Now, it's Bridget Phillipson is Education Secretary, but she's also, of course, the Women's and Equality Minister. She often forgets the women's bit, I find. She's been accused of putting her career ahead of women's rights in the trans war. Playing sort of the woke card, which for some reason doesn't think that women needs and safety needs to be protected. She has until, I think, yesterday refused to even meet the women who brought that Supreme Court case. But I bet you anything, if it had been a trans case brought against women and they'd won, I bet you should have met them then.
Exactly. I mean, very soon after the judgment, all the government departments were putting out statements saying how much compassion and sorry they were for the disappointment of their trans colleagues, but none were saying how sorry they were to women for getting the law wrong for the past 15 years, and we're still waiting.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? And this isn't, I see you arguing people online, and I do as well. This is not anti-trans. Feel free, do what you want, be with whoever you want, call yourself whatever you want, that's absolutely fine. But you don't have the legal right to take the rights of other people that you are not. So you don't have the right to compete in women's sport if you're a biological man, or be put in a women's prison, or use a women's refuge, or go into women's toilets or changing rooms. Girl guides, it's for girls, not for boys who think they're girls. It's really simple. No one is taking any rights away from trans people. What they're doing is asserting women's and girls' rights.
Exactly. And now we hear that there's been horse trading between the government and the Equality and Human Rights Commission over this guidance. The Commission submitted the guidance in September, and the government sat on it until quite recently. Then it sent some comments, and the EHRC, which is supposed to be the independent regulator, updated the guidance to bring it more into line with whatever the government had told it. None of this is public. It's all gone up behind closed doors, and the law is the law.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's not complicated. There is nothing complicated, and the law hasn't changed. The law always was this. People have been breaking the law along. Now, no, you at Sex Matters have been bringing various cases, you know, some NHS trusts, some other bodies, and it feels like we're going to have to go through one after the other. But we're seeing NHS trusts still, you know, battling against and taking on, you know, female nurses. Like we have numerous cases where they're being forced by their contract, you know, to basically get changed, where the man is standing there, grows his hair, puts on a dress and says, I'd just like to watch women getting changed down to their bra and knickers before my shift every day. And they're siding with the man in these cases. Now, it is at least one thing that Jennifer Melley, who was a nurse who was branded a potential risk to the public by her managers because she refused to use a patient's preferred gender identity. He was a convicted paedophile. He was in hospital. She was referring to him, in fact, outside of the room, about him, because it was actually about having a treatment that involved his penis, what with him being a man and not a woman. And Jennifer Melley was basically suspended and treated appallingly. She has now settled. She's got a payment in settlement for that case because she'd done nothing wrong at all. She'd expressed her Christian beliefs, but with or without them, she'd done nothing wrong. But that money, of course, is your and my money. That's taxpayers' money. The people who suspended her, they're not getting any comeuppance, no accountability, as we've been talking about on the show in relation to the Southport attack. It just carries on. And Bridget Phillipson getting no accountability as well. She has issued a statement today saying the government has always supported the protection of single-sex spaces based on biological sex. I mean, that's a flat-out lie. And she says, we're getting it right later on. It's a load of gobbledygook. I mean, it's a whole long load of gobbledygook.
It's a slap in the face to women like Jennifer Melley and Sandy Peggy and the Darlington nurses to say the government has always supported single-sex spaces, because women have lost their jobs, they've been harassed, they've been hounded out of work and careers for saying that their employer should follow the law. The idea that the government has always stood up for these women is just not true.
Absolutely. And the statement ends with, we're getting it right, showing leadership by implementing the clarity the Supreme Court ruling delivers. It was April last year.
Yeah. I mean, the guidance now, they say it's coming in May. Hopefully people will follow it then, but it's not good enough. It's harmed so many women and girls across the country because the government wouldn't just stand up as soon as the Supreme Court judgments came out and say everyone needs to follow the law, starting with government departments, the NHS, the the police and the public sector.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? I mean, again, and a small point was making, this is a government led by a man who has claimed that 99.9% of women don't have penises, but 0.1% of us do. Should we do our little regular check, Maya? Do you want to check for yours, whether it's grown during the interview or not? I'll check for mine. No, still not there. Weird that, eh? Maya, you've just, you know I'm your biggest fan. Chief Executive of Sex Matters, Maya was just standing up for this. And again, we laugh, Tom Slater, because you have to laugh, because it's so insane that we had to have a Supreme Court ruling on what a woman is. You know, 2-year-olds know what a woman is. Frankly, 6-month-olds know what a woman is.
Yeah. We need a Supreme Court ruling whether the sky is blue, whether water is wet. That's
we're in that territory.
Mislead you, unfortunately, but yeah. And maybe at some point we'll have a women and equalities minister who knows what a woman is. But we wait
but also, you know, again,